Well, good morning, everyone. April 10th. Appreciate everybody being here. We have our council members are present. Mr. Reddy is by Zoom, and Mr. Adams will be coming shortly. Thank you. We'll begin with item 1A, a presentation update on the city's new public safety support department. Mr. Butler, Ms. Meza. Thank you, Kim.
Mayor, Council, good morning. Kim and I are glad to be with you. Just again, for the record, Scott Butler, Assistant City Manager. Kim Meza, currently, well, we're about to get to her soon-to-be new title, but Deputy Director, thank you, in the Mesa Police Department. So, Mayor and Council, since we were going to have several hours together talking about public safety this morning, then we thought it would be a good opportunity to update you all on our multi-year process right now in improving our public safety communications and also share with you the news that we were able to share with our communication staff and senior leadership within police and fire last night that the city manager has named Kim Meza to oversee what we have now labeled our Mesa Public Safety Support Department. As you all remember, this is a process that started roughly 3 years ago as we looked nationally for best practices on how we can improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our 911 communication system. We have some great employees that are working throughout the organization day in and day out, making sure that those emergency calls are routed to the right individuals, but we did see some deficiencies in our system and some areas that we could, both utilizing technology and structurally through national best practices, find better ways that we can deliver even more efficient service to our residents that unfortunately have to call 911 and ensure that they have a seamless experience by the lack of handoffs. And if you all remember previous discussions, that was one of the big sticking points that we had as we looked through our system are the way our system runs today. There are handoff points if it's an emergency call that's ultimately a medical call and or a fire call that needs to be transferred over from our police department to our fire and medical department. There's a transfer that happens and another caller has to take over, and there's a repeating of information, and also there's dual responsibilities that our dispatchers are sometimes asked to have to handle. So part of this effort was how can we look at national best practices to improve that experience for both our callers, and also what can we do for our employees to make sure that they have the best service and the best facilities and equipment and structure that can support the very challenging work that they have to do day in and day out. This is where we had contracted with Winborn Consulting, which is a national firm that works on issues just like this. They've consulted all across the world, actually, but all across the country to other departments on how to manage and streamline their public safety communications. So through that process, we've had a very exhaustive and thorough dialogue over the last several years that has included a governance group that we've formed internally that includes both of our police and fire chief, along with assistant chiefs from each department, along with Kim, who has been serving in an acting role for how many years now, Kim?
3 years.
3 years now. It actually predated me in the assistant role, where Kim was asked to step in and help oversee some of the activity that was happening in our communications department. So as part of that, we decided on a model a few years ago that would rely on a third department that would combine the efficiencies. Right now, we have a lot of duplication that occurs when you're having the same process that happens in both the police department and the fire department. So one of the efforts of this department is to get the efficiencies by combining a lot of those activities into one organization from an administrative side. So we definitely believe that we will see those long-term efficiencies by consolidating that into one area. But in addition to that, we listen closely to our fire and our police management. We talked to our friends in labor, and we understood the important relationship that exists between our dispatchers and the firefighters and the police officers that they work with during a call. That relationship, that information that's shared, how important that is. And we heard loud and clear from our folks in public safety that keeping that direct relationship between our dispatchers and their respective departments was very important. So as you'll see from the new model that we have adopted, the dispatchers do remain within police and fire and under that chain of command. And I appreciate all the hard work that that both chiefs, along with their assistant chiefs, have done to streamline those operations, to get the right personnel and the right people in place. And this is still an ongoing process where we're getting the right people in the right chairs moving forward in those roles. But you have the commitment from both of the chiefs that this is a priority for their departments. And we're very enthusiastic about the response we're getting there. At this point, why don't I turn it over to Kim and have Kim walk you through the different components of this? Because I did get a good question yesterday, which was, if this is, primarily about communications, why the name of the title? Well, there are some other functions that we want this new department to assume as well. Kim, as you all know, has overseen our forensics area and has been our lab director for many years. Joined the city back in 2000, right? So long-term city employee. But one of the national best practices as well has been to keep the forensics operations separate from the chain of command within the police department, just to ensure that there is nothing, no pressure or undue efforts that could be put onto a lab to have certain findings. And so that certainly doesn't happen in Mesa, but structuring forensics separate from the police department will follow that national best practice that's being adopted by departments all across the country. So with that, let me turn it over to Kim, and she can talk you through some of the other aspects of that.
Good morning. I'm Mayor Freeman, City Council members. The Mesa Public Safety Support Department is just that, a department that's mission is to support the activities of the agencies that we serve. So underneath that is now this new call taking and a focus on call taking in its aspect of delivering a one caller experience where when somebody calls, regardless of the resources they need, police or fire or medical, they will talk to one person. And then that information will then be sent to the dispatch of both police and fire for them to send the resources to our citizens. So a focus on call taking. The Forensic Science Division has essentially the same as it's been operating now for about 10 years, has been reporting to the Assistant City Manager. And that is actually the model and the recommendation nationwide, is that crime labs are independent of their law enforcement agencies that they serve. And it is to protect the science and also, if not the potential for bias, but the perception of bias in our criminal justice system, that the results and the scientific results they get are based on science alone. So that will remain in this department. And then the new aspects of this department are what would be consistent and shared upon, that's currently basically redundant in both police and fire currently. So clerical services, our quality assurance, training, hiring can all be combined and be more efficient being done together. So that would be our performance, quality, community engagement side there. And then our core services is all of the personnel aspects of the things, that the purchasing, the fiscal side of things, the employee services, our HRM or our employee funding and tracking. So
perfect. And council, you can see some of what Kim just described in more detail on the next slide. We don't need to go through all of those, but that gives you a more in-depth view of what those different components that Ms. Mesa just described. So long term, like we said, that one of the most important parts of this is the single intake for the caller. And this is something that I know as Mr. Brady, and we've all looked at this over the years, we definitely saw areas of improvement and some deficiencies that just our system created by the way that we had structured, and this new model will, we believe, greatly improve that caller experience for an individual that's forced to call 911. Again, we talk about the fact that the police department and the fire department will have complete operational control over their dispatching operations. We are, as you know, we were very thankful to the voters for approving the public safety bonds, which included money for us to start work on and construct a new communications center. We are in the early stages of that. We have an architect on board who's helping us design that, and we're narrowing down those sites and have identified a preferred site for that building, and so we're still a few years away from being able to cut the ribbon on that. That's for sure. But we are definitely in the early stages of being building a world-class facility that will allow all of these components of communications to be located in one building for better collaboration, better work environment, and better wraparound support services for our call takers and our dispatchers. And again, we are operating under a formal governance model within the city that includes the chiefs and leadership from both police and fire. I serve as the assistant city manager, serves as the chair of that committee, and we believe that's a great way to make sure that decisions that impact multiple areas of public safety can be discussed, and we can all be on the same page as we make decisions moving forward that relate to communications. So just again, next steps on this, we are formally launching the new department that's been discussed for a few years that will actually occur now in the coming months under Kim's leadership. Starting this fall, we're actually going to be piloting that universal call taker, that one call taker experience. And so we're going to make sure that is thoroughly tested and examined before we go live with that, just so that we can make sure that the call experience for our residents is that we haven't missed anything through that process. But we do expect to officially launch that then in sometime in 2026. And then right now it looks like it'll be 2028 when the new communications center will open, and we look forward to that ribbon cutting in a few years. So with that, we'll be glad to take any questions.
Yeah, just a quick point, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Scott and Kim. This all began really before Mr. Butler showed up as Assistant City Manager of Public Safety. And what was driving a lot of this, we were having a lot of challenges in our call taking area. We were having a hard time recruiting. We were having a hard time retaining. We had low morale. We had a lot of challenges there. As we got into that, we realized we needed to have a little more stability in the oversight. And so Kim was asked to come in. So effectively for the last 3 years, forensics and essentially the 911 center have been reporting to a assistant city manager in the city manager's office. And as that happened during that period of time, we took the opportunity to kind of look at best practice, decide where we needed to go. We brought in consultants. We've had consultants who do this work across the country. They came back with a lot of variety of forms. They met with employees. I think our communications employees now have received significant briefings, both feedback from the consultants. Mr. Butler has gone out to every shift on the communications to talk to them and get their feedback. So I think we've vetted this out pretty well. What's interesting to me is I think we're trying to break down silos. We're trying to be more efficient, and really this for me is what's driving this is the customer experience. Unfortunately, we've had the opportunity to listen in on some of the calls and the confusion and the frustration by some of our residents as they're trying to get 911 assistance, and their frustration of having to repeat information twice to a call taker as they're dealing with a very difficult situation. So we think this is also going to help us tremendously on the customer service standpoint. We think it will help us with joint responses with police and fire, because the call taker can stay focused on the individual on the phone, dispatch can be working on the response. What's interesting, though, if you think about it, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, what really intrigued me too is the possibility, the call taking today, the percentage of calls that come into 911, 60%?
60%.
60% of those calls are non-emergency calls. And so you think about when you have a 911 operator who it takes a lot of time and effort to train them to be prepared, be able to take a 911 call. But 60% of their calls are, I don't know, smoke detectors, where's the city offices, I don't know what, but it doesn't rise to that level. So this gives us an opportunity also to kind of figure out how to deal with that too, and those challenges that prevents, because it's consuming a very precious resource that we have and we've got to figure out. But beyond that, what is amazing to me, despite, we talk about these challenges and it's good for us to always look internally and be kind of critical of ourselves, but at the same time, it is amazing the time it takes from a call that comes in to the time a first responder shows up at your home. It is still some of the best times in the country. You hear sometimes communities around us and in this part of the United States talking about, well, 9 and 10 minute responses, that's just the best we can do. That's not the best we can do. You'll see our performances as far as on average what we get there. So I think this is just gonna make, one, the customer service experience, if that's what you want to call it when you're calling 911. The morale for the employees is significant, but we think we're going to create a lot of efficiencies, breaking down silos, creating more stability in the operations of this facility. And we've already been doing it really for 3 years with Kim's leadership. This is not new for Kim. We're not asking her to do something new. We're actually now trying to give her the resources so she can take all of it over and be effective at it. So appreciate the work that's taken place. These two, Amanda Freeman and many others of the chief's offices and their staffs, this is not easy. It's a cultural change, but I think everybody's worked through this, and I think that we have a lot of support to get this done. So thank you.
Good. Council, any questions? Ms. Pillsbury?
Thank you. So you say we've been doing this, so I'm assuming under forensics and call centers been under you, but have the other two parts of this been under you as well, or is that all going to be new?
Yes, Councilman Spilsbury, I have actually been over the 911 and dispatch centers for the police department for the last 3 years, and working very closely with fire, but that has been under the fire department the entire time. So I actually will still remain over the call taking portion of, and in the future combine one call taker with the fire. But police dispatching is returning to the chain of command of police, the police department, which is, I think, a very robust, good way of operating that way, because their function, the dispatching function, is primarily to dispatch and work with patrol. And so the operations of that should be under the command of police. So that will go back.
So what about the performance, quality, community engagement part and the core services division?
So that has actually been in the police department, but as well in fire. So it's really being done in both areas, and this is an opportunity for efficiencies to put those together and to ensure we all have the same standards and we're working towards the same goals.
So, but you haven't started doing any of that yet?
We have not.
Okay. And so I guess one of my main questions is just financial impacts of this. Is this going to cost more money? Is it going to save us money? I know not everything's about money, and the efficiency and customer service and safety matters, but also in the middle of us doing budget cuts, I just kind of I'm not seeing any impact on finances here.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, the budget office has included the administrative costs that we're going to have to stand up a new department and have that leadership. But we do believe that long-term, because of all those efficiencies that we spoke to, that this will eventually be a cost neutral or a cost savings endeavor, because right now we're duplicating so many efforts across two departments and two different processes that could be consolidated into one, and that's what that department what the department seems to do is to create those efficiencies. But we do have this, the cost associated with standing up this department included into the budget, and definitely as time goes on, we'll be glad to report back to council as we really get into the weeds and can get into more efficient and get into those efficiencies that we believe that this new model will bring.
Right now, we have a little over $1 million set aside to stand
to
this up.
stand this up? Okay, and so as part of that, it sounds like a lot of current employees doing this kind of work in the two departments would then be under this. So are they switching, like, who they report to under you then?
Again, Kim has all the call takers from so right now, when you make a call comes to 911, Kim, what happens? Where are those individuals
I'm more
today?
talking about those other two that I had just mentioned, like the community engagement, performance quality, like people who are doing analytics, performance
Yeah, they
evaluation,
don't.
all the community
See,
outreach.
that's what we don't have right now.
But like, so are you taking the current people from police and fire that are doing that in the two departments? Are you removing them from those departments to bring them to this? I know there's a lot of details. I'm just trying to understand how this is all
Yeah,
working.
absolutely. And Kim, please jump in. Those are some of the details that we are working through right now. We're looking at this from a technology standpoint. We're looking at this from a procurement standpoint, all those different functions that are existing and duplicate within those departments. And so that's what we're working to build out. We do have a model that will be based on resources as we go forward. The priorities within this department would be weighed just along with our other public safety costs. So some of the things that we would like to do that we are lacking relative to some of the other cities on quality assurance and some of those components that we would like to do, we would like to see a more robust effort through this department to do that. But we'll be adding some of those functions as funds become available.
But Scott, as far as the actual employees today doing the work, the call takers that are there today, we're going to, what's in PD today, right? We'll have a portion of them will be call takers under Kim, and then we'll have a group that does just dispatching for PD. They will now go under the command staff of the police department. On the fire side, all of that fits under the fire department today. They have their call taking and dispatching. So we're going to have to reconcile. We want to obviously keep the dispatching of fire in fire, and what that looks like as far as the resources that need to support call taking. We're going through that process today.
Okay. Still seems like there's quite a bit of
That's why it
overlap.
takes a lot of time. No, that's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay,
We're trying
well,
to get there.
And I guess like I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's like 10 employees in fire and 10 employees in police that are doing those two middle sections. Are you taking the resources using to fund those in police and fire and pulling that from those departments into this department so that we're not paying for it in three places now?
Yeah, we're going to make sure the function of call taking is only in.
Well, get rid of call taking. I'm talking about on slide 3. So if you take the call center services out, that sounds like we're already doing that, and the
Okay.
forensic services out, that sounds like we're already doing that. Those two middle ones,
Okay.
anything that falls into those two categories that are already being done in police and fire.
A lot of those are new positions. They don't exist
They would be
today.
new positions.
We don't have that kind of support with the call center today. That's what we're lacking. We've identified that's some of our
So
challenges.
those are pertaining to just the call center, not to, I guess maybe
Correct.
that's my confusion.
Yes.
So not on the police department or the fire department. We're not doing HR, strategic planning, community outreach. It would just be stuff related to the call center.
Yes.
Only related to
Okay,
communications.
that's where I was confused.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry about that, yeah.
No, that's fine. Okay, I'll stop for a minute and see what other questions.
What we
people-
find is we really need to have an emphasis. This is such a specially position, the training it takes to take a 911 call and take on any kind of emergency. We need to do a better job of supporting that recruitment and that training and retention of those employees, because that's where we were. I can't remember what our percentage of vacancies was 3 years ago, but we were almost in a crisis, because you can't, even if you have vacancies, you still have to have someone answering the calls. And a lot of communities are struggling with being able to fill those positions. And so we feel like the investment in, if you would, just the people side of this operation is really important. It's something we probably had lacked doing, is really caring and taking care of those employees. Think about that they're late at night, they're 24/7, right? And being able to recruit, retain, train, it takes a lot of effort, and we need to have a more concentrated support for those employees, and that's what a lot of these positions are doing.
Mr. Heredia, do you have any questions?
Well, no, thank you. I was confused as well with Julie. I thought I understood the call taker piece. I thought there was more other efficiencies trying to combine them into this department. So my question is, are we looking at other areas, for instance, or for example, like records or billing, that maybe both departments do that can be assumed under a department like this that ensures that we're looking at in improving those areas, right? Not saying that these haven't been improved, but looking at other types of functions like admin functions that can be combined into a department like this.
Mayor and Councilmember Heredia, one of I think the benefits of this department is, I referred to it yesterday to a council member, is this is Switzerland, right? This is meant to be that neutral area that can support both the police department and the fire department without worrying about who has operational control over some of those functions. One of the areas we've looked at was the mental health response. That's something that touches both police and fire, and this could certainly be an area that helps ensure, and we'll be talking, I know, about Solari and our mental health response coming up in the future, but this is exactly the types of things, Councilmember Heredia, projects that overlap and touch both departments. The two that you mentioned with records, and we haven't gone down that path, but that is the intent. You're getting at the intent that if there are areas or programs that need a place to reside that don't fit neatly, it's under the public safety umbrella, but it doesn't fit neatly into just one department because it touches both, that this is an area this is a department that could benefit from those programs.
Mr. Heredia, any other questions?
No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I haven't been part of this conversation outside of just the discussion of the bonds that we had. And I've expressed a lot of concern with respect. That's a lot of money. I think it was appropriate to put that forward because I do know that PD, regardless how it moves forward, definitely needs a new alarm room. It's out of date, out of space, out of tech. My concern in moving forward is that I appreciate the discussion of the customer contact because that's really important. But there are other customers here that we need to make sure are addressed. And that's the police officers and the firefighters who are in the field who need information as they're responding. So it's great to have a point of contact when Ms. Duff calls 911. She just wants to give the information and get the trucks rolling. But the police department needs information about a suspect. How is he dressed? Which way is he going? What is he armed with? Is he armed at all? Is he wearing a shirt, as we saw today? The fire department is going to be asking, how many victims? Who's shot? You know how to do CPR. There are different questions, and those questions need to be answered for the safety of the responders coming in. So where is that conversation? These are, when we used to have a single alarm room, dispatch center, PSAP, and then we split those up because it wasn't effective. They're two very different cultures here. Right, and that's evidence in this room. Every police officer is in the front row, every firefighter's in the back.
They just knew they had a long wait.
Right. I'm not judging. Yeah. I'm not judging. I just use this to illustrate the fact that there are two very different cultures here and two very different needs. So if we're to separate this out into this department, how is that PSAP call taker, public safety access point, call taker, going to look behind at their customers that are now trying to respond in the safest manner? How does this improve that?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, and I do want Kim to answer this, but I do want to say that I think that's one of the beauties of the system that's been designed right now, because now the dispatcher can fully concentrate on that officer or that captain who's in the engine rolling onto a scene to be able to get all of that accurate information. Previously, the call taker was having to juggle both the caller, in the case of fire and medical, both the caller trying to relay information, including life-saving information that they were needing to relay to that caller, while at the same time trying to relay information to that captain about where in the unit to park and what information about the individual that was the pertinent information that the crew needed to know as they were arriving on scene. So in listening to our first responders, that is one of the things we wanted to make sure is now the dispatchers are solely focused on making sure that our officers in the field and our crews in the field are getting that information without interruption, without distraction, and that they're focused on delivering that. So Kim, please, if you could expand on that.
Vice Mayor Summers, so one of the things that we actually have identified currently is that in our practices and in our separation of our two PSAPs is that we actually don't have a flow of information through our CAD system. And so currently what happens is when our 911 operator enters the case, that data is actually viewed by our police dispatchers and that information is continuous. Currently what happens is a phone call occurs between our 911 operator in police and the operator dispatcher in fire, and that information is passed along by phone. There is no data that's transferred. So that initial information is given to fire, and then after that, they are not receiving the additional information unless a phone call occurs again. So the desire here and the focus here is that the call will come in and be handled by one system. The call taker will enter all that data, and all the information will be transmitted to both dispatch, fire, and police, and they will be getting the save life information. They will cross information amongst each other, and then now we are all communicating together. So it is designed to be a much more robust system, more holistic approach to joint coordination between the two sides, that the information is actually there for everybody and not just a one-time information and then playing from behind.
It was unfortunately too siloed before.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mayor, Vice Mayor, it was unfortunately too siloed before, especially if a call might start out as something not requiring a joint incident response, but then in the course of that, it was discovered that something that might have been perceived as a medical call actually required police assistance. It required different handoffs and different communication, literally by phone call between one dispatcher to another to get that information then out. So it really, there were a lot of inefficiencies in the system that created. And so one of the beauties of this is that it will make sure that that information is flowing seamlessly.
See, but I don't want to get in the weeds on this. What I would like to do is have a public safety committee meeting to review this, because I haven't seen the Winborn report. Mm-hmm. You talk about the potential to save efficiencies. It's going to cost $1 million to stand this up. Mm-hmm. I assume most of this, the budget for this is merely just transferring it out of PD and Fire's area into this new department. So I would hope it'd be cost neutral at some point. We talk about, that there's best practices out there, but I haven't seen what organizations are recommending this. So, and this is just a presentation on what that process is, and we got budgets to discuss.
Yeah.
So I think what I'd like to do is get the answers to those questions at a subcommittee meeting in the very near future, before this gets too far ahead and we have to start making decisions on spending.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor and Vice Mayor, that's great. We'll be glad to do that, because you're right. A lot of this discussion occurred before you returned to council, Vice Mayor, so we'll be glad to share with you and show both through the report and through all the data that we've collected, all the different agencies nationally that have moved to this model, and local best practices too, like the city of Tucson and others who have stood up efforts that are different but similar in how we're going about this as well. So we'll be glad to have that.
And as part of that technology, we got to look at real-time crime center, mm-hmm. FirstNet integration of video, the SafeCom interoperability, the Topaz, and all that's going to tie into this as well. There's a lot of information to this, and I don't have it.
Absolutely, Mayor and Vice Mayor, and our approach has been, as Mr. Brady had said, when we saw the urgency of the caller experience and the things that we should improve on, it doesn't matter how many men and women we employ in police or fire, if they can't get to the call and they can't get there with the correct information. And so it's essential that we do this right, and that we don't have turf wars, and that we don't, we break down barriers and find efficiencies, because it's all about getting the right resources to the right individuals at the right time. At the same time, we've got to do right by our employees. These are first responders, right? They deal with the challenges of a very stressful job, the mental health challenges, the other challenges that come along with that. So we also have to do right by them by making sure that we have the facilities, the wraparound service, the mental health components, everything that we need to ensure that they can do their jobs and stay healthy in doing those in doing their job. And so that has been the overriding desire of this, is to do right by the public, to do right by the caller, and to do right by our employees, to make sure that we're giving them the best services that they can get. So I'd love to continue to work with you, Vice Mayor and Council, on educating. And like we said, this has been a marathon and not a sprint. We're 3 years into this, and we've got years to go. But it's so important that this isn't something you can flip a switch and change. As Mr. Brady said, there are cultural issues, but there are technical issues. There are other issues that come into play that take a long time to ensure that we're doing this right. So we appreciate Council's indulgence this morning as we've talked more about this.
Ms. Pillsbury.
Yeah, just so to that point then, if there's still a lot of questions, I don't hear a lot of details on these concepts that we're talking about. I mean, are we approving or recommending to move forward with this launching the new department in the summer, or can we talk?
We're down that road. The department is being stood up today.
Well, because it sounds like you're already doing it.
Yes.
So what, I mean.
Yeah.
So we'd be glad to provide the information of what we base these decisions on, the input from the employees, the consultants report. We talked about this when we stood up and went forward with the communication center. So since then,
I don't remember ever hearing anything about a new department necessarily. I think that's where I remember all these conversations over the last few years, but I don't remember ever hearing we were going to do a new department until I looked at this yesterday. So again, it's just some more of those details, but it sounds like you're doing this whether we want to move forward on it or not.
Listen, I think that's what we do, right? That's what we're charged to do, is to manage the organization and to make these kind of decisions. We made these decisions 3 years ago during the year, right? Because we had a challenge with morale, with recruitment, with retention. We realized then we were having problems with customer service. And so, probably one of the decisions we made that I regret the most is the separation of police and fire. I think it was a bad move, and I think it created a more cultural divide between the two. And when we sit down and when you listen to the calls, it's frustrating for someone on the other side of 911. We have advanced the technology significantly. The region now has advanced technology. We don't get to decide our technology. It's decided for us because we're all part of the whole state of Arizona. The state of Arizona makes the decision on the 911 equipment, but it actually makes it very transferable. What we're trying to do here is separate the call taking from the dispatching. The dispatching will now be completely connected to the command of the fire and police department. What we're consolidating is the call taking. And as we looked around the country and looked at best practices, that's really, what a lot of these big agencies, counties are doing, is creating that as a separate, well, frankly, some actually have consolidated everything. But we working with our staff, we said, no, we need to do the call taking so that the customer, the caller is on the call with the same person throughout the call. There's no handoffs. The dispatcher is listening in, getting all the information, while they're also then dispatching the resources to respond. So what we're doing here is we would be spending this money. We would have not taken care of this part of the city's public safety, because unfortunately we kind of spend a lot of our priority on the sworn side, and this is not the sworn side. And so as we looked into this, we realized we need on the front end of public safety response, you needed to put additional resources. So that's
So
why
if we're already doing it currently, what level does having a department take us to? Like, what's the difference in having
It
an
allows us
official
to,
department?
we will now, what happens is Kim's budget for the 911 is inside the police department, right? So it makes, there's kind of this inefficiency administratively of being able to, she's spending, her employees that she is responsible for are in the police department budget. We need to pull them out so that she has complete oversight and responsibility for how that's spent.
And that's what's
managing.
not happening currently, obviously.
Correct, yeah, that's still, right.
So again, this then was more just like, this is what we're doing, this is where we're moving, educational to the city council. You're not looking for approval from us to move forward.
I mean, it's just like anything, it's in a budget, but as far as the organizational, we're doing it. It's kind of in place. The employees have been told, this is what we're happening. You know, here's what here's what it's gonna look like in the future.
I'm not on the public safety committee. I mean, I suppose I can listen in on the meeting, but, because I would also be curious to know a lot of the same questions that Vice Mayor Summers had so that I can understand this better, because I'm still just, not that we have to get into the weeds and all the details, but I'm confused on a lot of the logistics of this.
Sure, Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, and Mr. Brady's exactly right.
I'm on public safety? Oh, I guess I'm on public safety. I'm on, since when?
Well, now you'll get this firsthand experience.
Okay.
But no, as
Since
Mr. Brady
January,
said,
we haven't had a meeting.
because
Okay.
this has been a long-term effort over several years, that you're right. This was a check-in point just to let you know that we'd reached another milestone in this, and that we'd made some personnel decisions by one naming Kim the director of this department. But we're moving to a different milestone in this. I think, as Mr. Brady alluded to, once we realized there was a problem, there was always going to be the standing up of these resources outside of the police department and outside of fire. As Mr. Brady said, a lot of agencies have gone to a standalone department, and we have done the same, but the real question became, what were the components of that department? Would it include everything, like the city of Tucson did, including dispatch and others, all within one chain, or would it take the model that we've chosen to still allow operational control within police and fire? And so those were some of the in the details that we've been working through with the chiefs and their leadership over the past couple of years. So this was to inform you that we are still going down this path, that we are still making progress. We're still working on the communications center that you all were great enough to refer as part of the bond, and we're working full speed ahead to get this implemented.
So one other quick question, is there now a new director then that will be over forensics that would report to you? Or are you still keeping that job title?
No, yes, we will be, after the promotion, we'll be filling the lab director position.
Okay.
We've had an acting, Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, we've had an acting director in that role since Kim only has so much bandwidth right now, so.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Just to close it out, because we've gone a long time on this issue, thank you for sharing those concerns. It's again, the culture between police and fire is different. They still are going to remain silos. And there are challenges to be with the dispatching, clearly. But before we get too far down the road and spend a lot of money on fixing a problem, this right now is a pivot point time to look at what options are. Is this still the best option today? Because most of this council wasn't here when these decisions were made. And it is, to his point, it's a budget question, right? This council will vote on the budget. This council will decide whether or not to issue GO bonds. So it needs to be a conversation, and if this is the right way to go, and there are then that's the direction that we're going to head. So we'll look at it in the public safety.
Yeah, Mayor and Vice Mayor, we're glad to have that conversation. All we know, and I think Mr. Brady would assert this as well, status quo is not acceptable for our community, right? And so we've got to make some changes that enhance the public safety for our community. And so, but we're glad to talk about this. In fact, the consultant, of course, helped. One of the options was the full consolidation. So we're glad to revisit these discussions and look forward to working with you on that.
Might not be done.
Yeah.
Council, any other questions?
I do just one quick.
Yeah.
Ms. Duff.
I know we've
Mr.
spent a long
Adams.
time, but I just wanted to make one quick comment. I'm encouraging to lean into technology, just in the technology, summits and such I've attended. Seems like there's a lot more available to public safety, especially on the location of all the live time location, the way you can see where all the different units are and where they're responding. So by the time you get the call information and the time you arrive on scene, there's a little bit of So anyway, I am not an expert in this. I've just been briefed in various, things about the immense amount of technology that's allowing more efficiency in public safety. And I know we like to look at best practices and what other cities are doing, but sometimes technology is moving so fast that maybe on some of these things it makes sense. We should lean into them and not wait for others to do it and have the response on it, and then years later. And if it's something that we can pilot or work on and be a leader in how we already are in public safety. I don't want to take that away. We do amazing work and being a leader in how we execute our public safety, but with technology, leaning into that a little bit more to help us continue to be that leader. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you. Very briefly, I see the merits here, particularly if I'd look to see if we have some data on whether or not the actual response time from the initiation of a 911 call to a police or fire arriving on scene are improved. That would be a huge benefit, I would think. But I think rather than get down in the weeds of this, I'd wait for the Public Safety Committee to take a in the weeds look at it and then come back to council. Thank you.
Mr. Heredia?
So my only question, if we could just circle back to the point of today, is how is this impacting the 25-26 budget?
Because we've set aside some funding to stand up some of
That's
these
what you were
middle,
talking
yeah,
about.
that's what I wanted to make sure. We want to be, obviously making sure the council understands we're moving forward. We believe and have been moving forward with the creation of this department, but now when we're getting to the point where we need to not just try to use the existing resources that Kim has and trying to work within the police department budget and this part that has it, we had to go back and thoroughly kind of vet out what would it take to really support the 911 system as we stood it up. And this is what we came back with. And we said, okay, we need to, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's make sure we have the supporting support to the communications group, whether it's in the training, the recruitment, the benchmarking, the tracking the data. We don't have those resources because a lot of that is focused on what's happening in the police department and their efforts. And so it just by its nature, the crime fighting, what the police department becomes the priority, right? And this doesn't become is not the priority. And so by separating it on the call taking, the 911 side, we want to make sure we staff it up and have the resources to do all the things that need to be done to continue to follow up on the effectiveness of this.
So was it a
department.
shift, as we've kind of asked, was it a shift of resources or these?
There's some of that was going to happen where we're literally taking positions out of departments and putting them in this department. But then as we did that, we realized we don't have, instead of trying to parse out and pull out portions of other support out of the police or fire department, we're leaving it in those departments and standing it up as its own department with those, the analytics and the oversight of this department is what we're doing. So yes, it's going to create a little bit more expense, but it's a public safety expense. It's on the front end of public safety experience. And we think it's, in the end, the improvement in customer service experience, the morale for the employees, retaining employees and not having to keep retraining employees over and over again. There will be savings in the long term because we believe this is a better system. And we've already seen that Kim's been able to come in and stabilize the workforce, and we want to make sure that we continue to do that.
Okay. The only other comment I would have would be similar to Councilmember Adams, that we would assume that this changes the response time a little bit. I mean, it may also just make work easier,
Oh, yeah.
For sure, and that's hard to measure. But
don't disagree.
I would also think that there'd be
it's that,
some way
and
to track.
it's both a response time improvement, we believe, but we think it's a qualitative experience also that will make a big difference.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions and remarks. Between police and fire, how many calls per year do both agencies do combined?
Police receives about 1 million calls a year, and I do not know how many transfer to fire.
But overall, since there's one point of entry into the call ticket, there's 1 million calls that come into the Mesa Communications Center.
600,000 are not emergency.
And 600,000 are non-emergency.
But so that's what we're standing up, is a department that will take 1 million calls, that will have the full attention of one department director, along with the forensics. It doesn't happen today when it's being bifurcated. Not that it doesn't get attention, but we need to have a qualitative review and oversight of 1 million calls. And we just can't do that. It hasn't been happening in the past, and we've seen it and how it's affected our employees, it's affected the customer experience, so that's one of the motivations. And again, it's a best practice. The best practice, frankly, for a lot of areas is to consolidate the entire process, dispatch, call center. But we worked with our sworn officers, and they said, no, we really want to keep that dispatching side attached to the sworn. And we said, so let's figure out a model that makes that work.
I assume that's not unique to Mesa, that high number of non-emergency. I imagine, is there something about our residents that?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay, and so what, and maybe this is a better question as we get into it, but I would assume we're doing some things to try to lower
We
that
have some ideas we
percentage.
want to talk
Okay.
to council about, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I really like this. I think it's very important to me. We need to have continuity in our call taker. As our calls come in, I've experienced it firsthand, where the call taker takes the call and then sends that call over to the dispatcher, and so there's no continuity there. And then the information is not relayed timely. So I think more importantly, number one, when the call comes in, again, continuity happens, and then the dispatcher stays on the line with that call taker and dispatches the right information. Number two is it will hopefully reduce our response times overall. That's what our residents are paying for, is paying for effective communications in our 911 center. I recognize there will be some core services and overlaps, and there will be some costs here to stand up the department, but I hope in the future that once we get this guardrails around it, that we can reduce our costs, because I look at, managing budgets, HR, procurement, vendor relations, all that. That all happens, in different agencies, and then having it under one department hopefully will reduce our costs. And then we're more efficient. And having, in the future, having a call center where all departments are at, dispatching, I think is essential, and having 2 different buildings. Having been in both buildings, and we were at critical mass about 3 years ago with our dispatchers, and it was very important that were we going to be able to maintain our call volume and exercise our responsibilities in getting out the information at our 911 center to our police and fire department. So I see all this as a benefit to our department, become more efficient. So we'll give it some time and come back to our Public Safety Committee and get them up to speed, and we'll go from there. You may.
Just a point of concern about non-emergency numbers using 911. People ask, they don't want to look up the non-emergency number. They don't have it in their phone. They don't know what it is, but everybody knows 911. I don't know if there's any way to have another way that people just have it in their head. This is non-emergency and this is the number I call, because memorizing the, and however many, 9, I don't know, 8 or 9 numbers. What do we have, 6 and 4, 10 numbers in a telephone number? Memorizing that. I mean, we don't hardly know our spouse's phone number, let alone the non-emergency number.
You're talking, it is an issue. We need to figure out, there are 311 systems out there. There's
Something, yeah.
Okay. We want to talk about that in the
Great,
future.
wonderful, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Council. Thanks, Council.
Next item is 1B, to hear a presentation on the police department's budget.
You got it? Okay. Appreciate it.
Welcome, Chief Cost and your team.
Thank you. Good morning. It was a good time for a break because we're not going to try to filibuster and keep our brothers and sisters from the fire department in the back too long. So
They seem happy.
They're always happy.
So, good morning. We can go to the next slide, Krista. It's always, we always appreciate and we're grateful to present in front of mayor and council and city management how we use the precious resources of our citizens and our businesses and how important public safety is. And, watching all the other presentations from my colleagues and all the other department and just being grateful that we work for a city that puts their people first, and it's not just talk. You're walking the walk, and so it's a great moment for us to be able to present in front of you and to represent the police department as just one cog of the wheel of a big city, and how important public safety is to you all, your constituents, and everybody here. So you look at our public purpose. Go ahead and go back to our public purpose real quick. Just a couple key words that coincide directly with the city's values, your values, and just our values as a community. When you look at community, you look at respect, the building the trust, showing respect and preserving human rights, and of course the crime reduction and crime fighting that's built in to our public purpose. We take that very serious. Everybody in the department knows exactly what that means. That's what we work with when we're provided these resources from the city and from our community. This is what we focus on. So go ahead with the next slide. Thank you. As you look at our priorities and objectives, what I love about our staff when we sat down with our strategic initiatives is they coincide with the council initiatives and what's important for the city. So as we go throughout this presentation, you're going to hear from all the bureau chiefs from these areas on specifically, even specific data and the things that we're doing and showing the success. And we're not perfect. There's things that we're going to need to work on. There's things that you'll have questions about that we will continue to work on. But you will hear from each of the bureau chiefs. You'll see if we're skilled or not skilled in musical chairs, because we'll have one talk and we've kind of rehearsed who's going to come up and who's going to go sit down. So that could be entertaining for you as we go through a long process. But what this process will entail is we're going to talk. And there's going to be some bragging, but it's bragging with a lot of work. The fact that we're the second safest large city in America, our size, is something that shouldn't be. You shouldn't be shy about that. We should put that out, because those are the things that catch the attention of residents and people who want to move their family here, along with our schools and our services and the things that they get. And is this a safe place to raise my family? And to be able to say there's only one city that's barely ahead of us on the East Coast is something that we should all be proud of, and it takes a lot of work. There's cities our size with the same demographics, with the same population that don't share that same success. So that's something that you'll hear from our staff on kind of where we're at, and get into the weeds a little bit on what do those numbers exactly mean. It's one thing to say it, but what does that mean, and how does that look over a long period of time? So you're going to hear about that. You'll hear about our injuries and our fatal collisions, things that direct impact our community. When you lose a loved one in a traffic accident, when they're just trying to go from point A to point B, or some of our most vulnerable population, crossing mid-block and being struck by a vehicle, that affects not just obviously the people that lose their life and their family members, but also, the people that are involved in those accidents. And so that's tragic, and we need to do a good job of making sure that we're reducing that. And that is more than just our police department. That's teaming up with other departments within the city. Talk about losing a life, homicide. The most important investigation that we have as a municipal police department is when somebody loses their life, and we need to hold that offender accountable. You'll hear more about that. We love our technology. You all know that. You've supported it. I would say that we have the best real-time crime center, arguably, in the nation. We've had well over 750 visits to the real-time crime center from people all over the country and all over the world to see what we're doing. We're very proud of that. Staffing and and the expansion of our new station. That has a brand new station with a new geographical area. Hasn't happened since 1998 when the Superstition substation opened up. And so a lot of people look and say, Chief, that's not right. You know, what about on Grove? We have Fiesta. No, it's a beautiful facility, but geographically, that was the Dobson District back in the day, and us old people still call it the Dobson District. You know, it's exciting. The first time since 1998. So you heard Chief Cutler talk about that. You'll have a financial overview from the person that and her team that really keep us on track as leaders of the department is Krista York, and you'll hear that financial overview from her and be able to ask questions. I mean, she runs the show, ladies and gentlemen, so make no mistake. And then what we're going to start off with is you're going to hear from Executive Assistant Chief Butler, and the first slide is going to be what we feel is our most important resource is our people, and what we do to invest in our people and their wellness, physical, mental wellness, well-being, and the things that we're doing with our resources to invest in them. So I'll kick it over to Chief Butler to start the presentation.
Mayor, Council, pleasure to see you guys today. Chief Koss really set this one up on a tee for me. But really, you know, what I'm going to talk about is just an overview of what we do for the men and women who go out there and perform for our community members every single day. You know, the bragging that you will hear, it is a humble brag, but it is a brag because we are good at what we do. And we're proud of that. You know, not a lot of agencies around the country have the opportunity to come in, present to their council with such great support and talk about our men and women. And it is something that is super, super important. So this initiative, our wellness initiative, it falls completely in line with the city's initiative on wellness. What we build with our wellness team, our peer team, and our police psychologist fits in the 8 dimensions of wellness as supported by the city, and it is something that we're incredibly proud of. So going back many, many decades, we've had a peer program. In fact, that peer program was groundbreaking. Many agencies around the state would come and visit with us. They would look at how we did what we did in the peer realm. But the peer realm is when members have experienced some type of trauma, we go in and work with them, and we provide resources, and we get help where it's necessary. But what we did a couple of years ago is we took that program, decided that we were going to completely rebrand that program and expand it into a wellness program as well. And the wellness program is building that resiliency before the moment that it is needed by the member of the organization. So we moved a lieutenant from another area of our department. We moved two sergeants from another area of the department, and we added a significant amount of resources for these programs because we understand the men and women of our organization deserve to be looked after. And when they're strong and healthy, they can go out and serve our community. As a result of that rebranding, we took our peer team coordinator and 10 part-time team members into a unit, and we now have 57 part-time peer team members. So more members of the organization said, hey, I want to help on a part-time basis, and they stepped up to come forward to help the men and women of the Mesa Police Department. We increased our chaplaincy program from 1 to 5 chaplains. Which we're really proud of. And we now also have 10 part-time peer team wellness team members in addition to our full-time staff in that area. So some of the programs that we've done with these new resources to look after our people. One of the things that we've done that's really groundbreaking, that nobody is doing this in the country, and it has started in a pilot program for us years ago, but we've taken that program and made it a department-wide program, and that's our wellness visit program. So now members of our organization have an opportunity every several years to go sit down with a clinical psychologist, a counselor, and just have a check-in, just to say, hey, are you okay? And we've done it in a way that it is voluntary but not voluntary, because we do have members of our organization that would say, hey, I don't need that. I'm doing just fine as it is, and we ask them to do it anyway, and it's just a check-in. And what we've found from that is we've gotten a lot of feedback that people are like, hey, I didn't think I needed that, but it's actually incredibly beneficial to me, and I've come across all these different resources that I'm going to incorporate. Again, all of these things are designed to look after the men and women who serve. We're super, super proud of them. There's a lot on all of these slides. If you have any questions, I won't just start talking. I'm not going to just keep talking about all the things that we're doing. But if you have any specific questions before we move on in the presentation, I'm happy to answer any of those.
Questions, council? All right, carry on.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Before I begin talking about the crime numbers, if you would indulge me for a few minutes, what I want to do is really discuss the FBI data. As I look, we have new council members, so I think kind of laying a foundation of what some of these numbers mean, I think will be beneficial to everyone on the council. So as the chief said earlier, the city of Mesa continues to be one of the safest cities in the United States. So in the following slide, I'm going to be highlighting FBI data. And one of the first things you'll notice is that we're talking about 2023 data. And the reason we're talking about 2023 data is because that's the latest numbers, the latest statistics provided by and published by the FBI. However, I will also provide a year-to-date snapshot for crime data for the city of Mesa. When looking at those years, the city has experienced a 2.5% increase in total Group A crimes from 2022 as compared to 2023. The FBI uses the National Incident-Based Reporting System, more commonly known as NIBRS, to collect and report on crime within the city. Group A offenses in NIBRS includes a wide range of serious crimes. These offenses are categorized into three main groups: crimes against persons, crimes against property, and then crimes against society. And I'll just provide a real brief summary of what each of those mean. Crimes against persons include, just in part, aggravated assault, simple assault, homicide, kidnapping, and sexual offenses. When we talk about crimes against property, the examples include arson, burglary, robbery, criminal damage, theft, and other property crimes. And then the last category, crimes against society, includes drugs, narcotic offenses, prostitution, weapons violations, and various other crimes. So a closer examination reveals that property crime in Mesa decreased by 2%, while persons crimes increased by 10%. Although homicides were down by 48%, what drove the increase in persons crimes were simple assaults, which increased by 25%, and aggravated assault, which increased by 12%. While we continue to examine the causal factors that have contributed to the increase in assaults, we know that the factors are economic challenges, substance abuse, domestic violence, gang activity, and crimes involving the unhoused have contributed to those increases. On the next slide, I want to talk about the comparison cities for Group A per 1,000 residents. So these comparison cities are the similar sized cities to Mesa as of 2021 that have been NIBRS compliant. So when we report crime rates per 1,000 residents, this provides us key benefits: standardization, trend analysis, and they assist in the overall resource allocation. Overall, reporting crime rates per 1,000 residents helps create a clear, comparable, and actionable understanding of crime, which is crucial for effective law enforcement, policy making, and community awareness. While the city has seen a slight 2.5 uptick in crime compared to similarly sized cities, those who live, work, and play in Mesa enjoy a safe and vibrant community. With a strong focus on safety measures and community engagement, the city continues to be a place where people can thrive and enjoy all the city has to offer.
Chief Rankin?
Yes, ma'am.
Before we go on to the next slide, I'm sorry, I just jumped in. A question I had in looking at how we compare to other cities is looking also how many officers we have per 1,000 to achieve those, crime stats. Like Virginia Beach, apparently I thought they are all retired people or something, but they have similar demographics. So, okay, how many officers per 1,000 per capita does it take to achieve certain goals?
So it's an interesting question. So when we look at police staffing, public safety staffing as a result to providing these services. It's not always an apples to apples comparison. One of the things that we pride ourselves in the city of Mesa is we have a 60-40 split. 60% of our personnel within the police department are sworn personnel, and 40% are professional staff. And what we believe as a philosophy within the police department, also as a city, is that there are functions that can be accomplished by professional staff. For instance, are traffic investigators, are professional staff, or civilians. So we're attempting to increase those numbers. That reduces the burden on a sworn officer who's responding to emergency calls. We also have civilian investigators. We also have forensics crime scene investigators, specialists that go out to collect the evidence. In some jurisdictions, because of unions and because of culture, that's not allowed. In some jurisdictions, what you'll see is that any police function has to be carried out by those that are sworn. So when you look at numbers in some of these jurisdictions, you'll see some of those numbers are a little higher than what you would see in Mesa. So I'll give you some of the...
Is there a correlation on what I'm looking for, instead of just the actual, is there a correlation as far as commitment from the city to have X amount of officers and the crime? I mean, because efficiencies, like you mentioned, and how things are handled have an impact. But I've heard some criticisms like, okay, we have a great safe city, but there is a certain cost to that, you know, that maybe we have double the number of officers another city does.
There is a correlation when you consider what it takes to provide adequate, efficient services within any given city, and those cities use different models. And so when we look at Mesa, for instance, Mesa's, we have 1.65 officers per 1,000. And when you look at a place like Oklahoma City, they have 1.57 officers per 1,000. And the example I gave earlier as it relates to union and the inability of using professional staff, we could look at Atlanta. Atlanta has 3.91 officers per 1,000. But if you look at the graph, you'll see that we have 43 crimes per 1,000, as where Atlanta has 74 crimes per 1,000. So more officers in that jurisdiction does not equate to a safer city. I believe that the blend that we have here has ensured that we are able to keep the numbers down to what it is today.
And just Mayor and Council, I think in other jurisdictions that I've worked in, you know, what's the measure of success in a police department, right? Is it hiring more police officers? Well, no, that doesn't necessarily, because it depends on how you use them. How are you deploying them? In other communities, we've used metrics like patrol availability, because you could have all the officers you want, but if most of them are sitting behind a desk or staffing up the detention facility or doing a lot of administrative work, that's not solving crime, right? So, but if you have patrol availability, meaning how often are the officers out on the streets patrolling? Is that an indicator of a safe community? At the end of the day, this is the chart, right? This is that says we have a safer community. Whatever we're doing, whatever blend of technology, using professional staff to supplement and support the officers. As you think about it, when we train an officer, we're training them to be a responder, to go out and take on a hazard, any kind of hazard response. But sometimes in other cities, they end up behind a desk, they're doing a lot of other administrative work, and despite the fact they have larger numbers, that doesn't necessarily mean a safer community. And then every community is different. It has its demographics, it has its economic issues. So, but for us, right, when we say we have, just be able to say we have one of the safest communities in the country of our size, it could be because we have more officers, or it could be because we're better at deploying, using technology. It could just be so many things. And you see how much we rely upon technology now, the multiplier effect to our sworn officers. So it's a struggle, right? It kind of to say what is that magic number, but at the end of the day, it's the results. And that's kind of what we land on.
Well, I would say, and you have to look at the affordability, right? So not only are we one of the safest, we're one of the most affordable. So
Yeah.
that is
There you
in
go.
balance.
That's fair. That's fair.
Well, I think two things. One, obviously, having a certain number of police officers on the street, having that presence on the street, you've alluded to this, helps deter crime. But how do you count a crime that didn't occur because a police car was sitting there, so the people that decided they were going to go down, and try to pull open doors to steal out of cars didn't do it? You can't count that. But having that officer there can make a difference. The other thing I think it can help with, and I wonder if you have the stats on this, is what is our case close rate as far as catching the people that actually commit the crimes? Is it in here? Which slide is it? It's coming up.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, if I could.
Okay, that's probably why I had it in my head.
We'll have some clearance on homicide. Probably a whole nother, or even something that we could come back to council with clearance on all the other cases, whether it be a robbery that occurred, an aggravated assault that occurred. But we do keep track of that, and then we measure ourselves against what is the national average. Like, for example, a national average to clear a homicide is 58%, and Chief Nesbitt will go over that. And we're on average in the 90th percentile, and Chief Nesbitt will talk about that more. So you'll hear a little bit about case management. You just had the audit committee talking about that a little bit on what we do internally, and that's working smarter. But I've worked with this metric, Councilmember Duff, a lot, even when I was the chief over patrol, the per 1,000. And we really balance that with the metrics and the data that we collect on how fast are we getting to the calls, when is that backup getting there to back the officer up, how long does it take those investigations to occur, and are we finding a solution for these victims on the follow-up, to your point? And the answer to all those questions is very, very positive. And we continue to have some of the best response times in the Valley. I believe we lead the Valley in response time. Now, District 5 and 6, you know that it's been a challenge as far as geographic, that the voters and the support that we got to build that 5th substation, we're really looking forward to looking at the data once that is open, and we staff that with officers to reduce that. But really, when that call, and it was apropos that we had the presentation before that, when that call comes into 911, what is our service level? How fast are we getting there? How quick are we following up? Are we relentless in our approach to solving those crimes? That's where that 43 per 1,000 comes from, is all of that. That's what we measure, even beyond the metric of how many officers per 1,000. Because I get asked this question, quite frankly, Mr. Brady, like, what is our authorized strength? Our authorized strength is what we get support from the council and from city management to hire people and get them in the pipeline, which you'll hear later from Chief Wessing, to be deployable on the street when we know we're going to lose officers from attrition, and we continue to have that instead of waiting a year to have them on the street. And the mission-based policing that you'll hear about, that we CompStat every 28 days to get officers specifically in the areas that we know where crime is occurring. That is where you see that presence, where we know vehicle burglaries are occurring somewhere in District 6. And we need to be there. Well, you know, because our lieutenants and our sergeants know every single day from our crime analysis and what we're doing, that we're pinpoint. So I would argue that we use these 1.65 per 1,000 better than these agencies that might have 3 per 1,000, because we better use our professional staff and we better use data to be pinpoint.
Yeah, and it's the use of data and particularly your operational, getting those folks out in the street and accounting for all those officers that still refer to, Dobson Ranch are probably retiring. Not all of them.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't want to be critical of PD because I think we have a fabulous department and everybody is efficient and I believe in what we're doing. I can see the stresses on our budget where we have dramatic increases and we have all these pressures and cuts we have to make, right? Because of the state funding we're not going to get, right? And we have dramatic increases in what we have to contribute to PD more and more, to the point that we are cutting quality of life things from our city, maybe from all the other things that we do, in order to keep that level of service. So it comes to a point like, we need to make sure we're efficient, but as we continue to cut we have to continue to cut next year and the next year, the next year. And police budgets are escalating very quickly. Where do we find the balance? Do we need additional public safety sales tax? Where do we want to be? I don't know. I'm just feeling so much stress on our budget, and there's a lot of pressure from public safety, which I appreciate, and I believe in what we're doing. But where are we going to find this balance year after year after year as we continue to push down deferred maintenance in all our departments, shut down programming and everything? So we can become extremely safe, but we will have closed parks, we have whatever. So it's finding that balance where we can be very efficient and still offer a quality of life. And if we can't do that, then we have to look at other revenue sources. Thanks.
Mr. Adams.
Chief Rankin, can you comment to how the adequate staffing, the number of officers in the field, how does that contribute one way or another to officers' safety when responding? And does that contribute at all to the safe apprehension or the less use of lethal force, as if you compared to maybe only one responding officer, whereas perhaps 3 might diffuse a situation? Can you comment to that?
Sure, I'd be more than happy to, and I'm sure the chief and others on the panel would also like to join in. The deployment of officers are also supplemented, and we've talked about the deployment of technology, whether we're using drone as a first responder, whether we're using aviation platform, the real-time crime center. These are all tools which also arrive on scene either before or at the same time the officers arrive on scene. So it's more than just the number of officers on scene, it's the number of eyes on scene that provide intelligence to the officer arriving. So for instance, if I have a drone overhead and I have the ability to see in the backyard, as where before we had this technology, I may have to go into the backyard and navigate it. Whether I have 1 or 2 officers with me, the danger is still increased. Now, if I have a set of eyes in the sky and I have a better ability to understand what that environment is, and I can make greater decisions as to what my next step is going to be. So again, I think it's a balance between having the number of officers, and the question is a perpetual question in that we're always analyzing what the appropriate staffing levels are. We have Mark Castleton, our data scientist, who works hand in hand with us to really look at what our calls for services are, what we're spending our time on, how long we're spending that time there, and ultimately, how do we take the resources we have and employ them most efficiently, and does it allow us to demonstrate a gap in the number of personnel we have? And if we do have that gap and we're able to present that to council based on a data-driven approach, then we'll come forth to the council and ask for further personnel to cover that gap. Again, I believe that the technology, the officers, the training ensure that our response is adequate in keeping our folks safe as well as keeping the citizens safe.
Thank you.
Mr. Reddy, any questions?
No questions.
All right. Carry on, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. So the chart that you see before you is a historical summary data. So I'd spoken earlier about the National Incident-Based Reporting System, or NIBRS, which the FBI has transitioned to as of 2020. And so it's highlighted there in orange, but I also wanted to look at the trend line as it related to summary data. So the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting Program has 2 primary systems, the summary data that I just talked about and NIBRS that we spoke about earlier. So the summary data really provides aggregate monthly tallies of crimes focusing on a limited number of offenses, to include murder, robbery, and burglary. It uses a hierarchy rule in the summary data, which means that only the most serious offense in a multi-offense incident is reported. As where NIBRS, which is what we're using now, offers detailed data on each crime incident, including information about victims, offenders, relationships, and circumstances. So This graph depicts summary data from 2011 to the end of 2024. The total number of crimes per 1,000 has continued to drop almost consistently in the last decade and a half to our lowest total crime number of 19.8 crimes per 1,000. This decrease in crime reflects the city's leadership and management and your unwavering desire to create a safe city for businesses, individuals, and families who call Mesa their home. I know we only go back as far as 2011, but for those of us sitting at the table who were here in the 90s, we know that it was 70 crimes per 1,000. When you go back as far as the 1970s, it was 100 crimes per 1,000. So the fact that we've gone from 100 crimes per 1,000 down to 19.8 really is a reflection of the commitment of this council, the commitment of city management, and the commitment of public safety to really look at innovative approaches to address crime and crime prevention.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, this slide is on our injury traffic collisions. We did see an increase of 4.1 in injury collisions in 2024 compared to 2023. However, traffic citations are up among our patrol officers, and traffic unit continues to provide guidance to patrol on areas needing attention within their respective districts. Patrol commanders are directing resources accordingly. We have on here the intersections that are the highest injury collisions listed and their respective times that these collisions occur, which drives our mission-directed activity when resources are available. We still work closely with transportation to meet with them monthly to analyze data, road conditions, and measures that can be put into place that affect driver behavior. And when I talk about driver behavior, you've seen the driver feedback signs, or sometimes there's modifications to our signals or modifications to our roadways. Unfortunately, with the resignation of the transportation analyst and the resignation of our CompStat traffic data analyst, we have not been able to complete a deeper analysis of collision data that would help drive our mission and resource allocation. We have ideas on what is happening, but data would make better solutions and more deliberate and tangible opportunities. And when we think about this, we think about the DDAX model, and maybe you've heard of that before, but that is our data-driven approach to crime and traffic safety. So we would like to be able to get to a place where we can do that again. And both transportation and PD are working diligently to hire those analysts, which will help drive our traffic safety mission.
Question.
Thanks. On Southern and Val Vista is right by my house and in my district, and that's the number one intersection here. And I know that there's already a plan in works to change things to make that a safer intersection. And I don't know if anyone from traffic's even here, but does anyone know if those other 4 intersections have plans to do something traffic-wise to help with?
You're talking about
safety?
Transportation Department?
Well, yeah, or I don't think anyone's here, but just wondering if I know Val Vista and Southern has plans in the works that will be starting soon. I just didn't know if those other 4 intersections.
I can't speak specifically
Okay.
to those, but what I can say is that that's what the purpose of that joint meeting is with transportation, and where we evaluate concerns, and they're constantly looking at those type of things. So I would venture to say these are high on their priority list of addressing what other things we can do.
Ms. Goforth.
I have a question. Can you explain, so the injury collisions by district, the percentages there, what I'm looking at here? So of the total injury collisions, that's where they're happening?
Yes, so
Even though I
it's-
look at Red Mountain and it's not the hot spot, I mean, it's not, I assume, actually, what is the map with the heat map next to it? Kind of shows.
That is showing you where the red is. It is showing your highest areas of collisions, like where you're seeing those. And what we are taking is basically when we get the data from what is a reportable collision, and then if there's an injury attached to it, that's how we break apart how those collisions are across our city. And if I'm being frank, we cannot really find a rhyme or reason, right? It's just sort of this it happens, right? And so that's part of why we have to do better analytics to try to figure out, do we need resources there to slow down traffic? Do we need resources there to prevent red light running? Do we need resources there to address issues so that we can make driver behavior altered? Because in fact, these collisions are behaviors of drivers and what they're doing on the roadways, and it's hard to educate them after the fact, right? You're trying to catch them ahead of time.
It's not just drivers, it's also road design, for
Oh, sure.
We cannot, and so I think you have, and who knows what percentage, and we're not the only ones, all over the country, I think.
Yes.
Trying to dissect a traffic incident is difficult, and I don't know very many police departments that actually do it, other than, some of the basic analysis that you go through, but really analyze the incident to determine what needs to shift in either design or lights.
Right,
or
and that's why
things like
we
that.
work closely with our engineers, and we have good relationships with the transportation department, because it isn't always driver behavior, but we can't refute that there is a level of, when you learn how to drive and you first take your driving test and you are very adhering to things, that over time, those things get altered. Things simple as, I could say, turning to the closest lane that you're supposed to turn and not making a wide turn. Like, people might say, why do police officers make those stops? Well, there's a reason, because there's an engineering component that allows traffic to move safely, doesn't cause backups, which doesn't cause frustration. All of those things come into play. So 100% road design, and as the city grows and we get more population and more drivers on the roadway, we need to relook those road designs and see if that's a component. And so transportation has been very good about, we look at things even as signaling. How long is the light yellow based on speeds? How long do we allow for a four-way red for those red light runners, right? Education, count 1001, count 1002, count 1003 before you step on the fuel to pass through the green light, right? These are all components of things that we're trying to push forward, that we collaborate with from the law enforcement side as well as the road design side.
And I think it's, when you have 17 injury collisions in one spot, it's not just driver error. Something about the design of that intersection, is, but anyway, I'm still kind of confused, because if I look at this heat map, all the red is on the west side, and yet it's telling me most of the collisions happen. I'm confused by this.
It's the time frame. Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mayor, Councilmember, go for it. The other thing, just keep in mind, is we're talking about our patrol districts and those boundaries.
Okay.
So when you're looking at Superstition, for example, that's 71 square miles, and Central is 14 square miles. And so you're just talking about a bigger area and the growth that goes into the southeast and northeast portion of our city. Those areas of patrol are bigger. They're going to have more volume of crashes just because of the geographical size as well.
Right.
And this is injuries, it's not necessarily.
It is not collisions.
It's not collisions, it's injuries, and so that's different.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
These are just specific collisions that equal injury collisions. There's a whole separate, your minor collisions that happen, your fender benders and those type of things that get, pulled off the roadway. We're not talking about those. We still address those type of collisions as well, but these are the ones that by statute meet the injury definition.
I would just bring up that traffic volume has a lot to do with the number. It's not just pure number, because these roads, particularly the ones that are in a lot of commercial areas, have a higher traffic count. So the number of accidents per the number of cars passing through could be actually lower than some of the other areas. We don't have that data here. Just like crimes per 1,000, how many accidents is 17 per how many cars passing through. The other thing I appreciate working with transportation, frustration. There's a lot of construction on these roads right now. So there's a lot of frustration that happens. So making sure that we make adjustments to timing of left turn arrows or green arrows to allow traffic to flow likely will reduce that frustration and bad decisions made, like red light running, or turning on a red light and causing an accident goes a very long way. So I appreciate you listening on those issues.
Thank you.
Just one comment on that. Also, on the west side, overall, the speeds are slower because it's a more congested. We have 40. On the east side, you see a lot of 45 mile. So the faster the traffic, the more injuries and more fatalities you have. Also, the streets are newer, they're nice and wide and have forgiveness areas. And so if we can look at this, when you look at probably the average speed for the street and its forgiveness and everything, people can go faster, but when there's an error, they have little time to react and it's more deadly, right? So that's where I think leaning a lot into the street design, because you will never, I hate to see many of our police resources, our officers doing critical work, worried about how fast people are going, when if we design this, made an investment to tighten up the design where these problems are, we wouldn't have to have the officers there. And sometimes, people see officers, and when they go away, they go back to their old ways of saying, I can go 80 here. Because I can, because the street's nice and wide and there's not any cars and I'm just going to do this. So while you're there, there's a consciousness, but I don't know if it's our best use of resources if just working closely with transportation, where are those places we can chip away at, changing the design, changing the lights, changing something to tighten up those areas that are problematic.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Chief.
Okay. As for traffic fatalities, we did see a decrease of 23.4% in 2024 from our 2023 numbers. Specifically, we saw just under a 50% reduction in ped bike involved fatalities in 2024. So what that means is we had 6 pedestrians, 2 bikes fatalities compared to 9 pedestrian and 7 bike fatalities. I would like to say that increased education awareness and enforcement were the driving factors, because we do get GOHS funding to do ped bicycle education and traffic enforcement, but we cannot definitively say that at this time, but that is one of the things that we are trying to work with, and that also goes hand in hand with transportation when you're talking about, your high walk areas where you're trying to allow for crossing, and we have a lot of issues with mid-block crossing and those type of things, people hanging out in the median. So those are all things we are, in fact, working with transportation. And I would like to say, years ago, I was the traffic lieutenant, and we did have a great relationship and continue to have a great relationship with transportation when it comes to road designs, even in neighborhoods, right? We're always reevaluating that and trying to see how we can work together. And we call upon each other often to address issues as we see them coming up.
Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
Just curious on the pedestrian bicyclist. E-bikes are really popular today. Wondering if that data is included as a bicyclist, or is it a motorized, and then there's...
It's super complicated on that part. So there's all these CCs, and if it has this type of battery and that type of battery,
Right.
where it falls. In these cases, most of the time, these are pedestrian pedal bicycles.
Okay. Do we have data on the other type of...
We do, yes. I don't have it with me, but we can make sure that we get the separation. We don't see quite the e-bike influx that you do in some of the other cities, like maybe Tempe or even like Queen Creek, where they think that they're still a small town, but they have these massive roadways, and so you have kids all over the place with e-bikes. But I can get that information for you.
Just
But
curious. Thank
how
you.
it's classified is dependent on the bike itself, its speed, how fast it goes, those type of things.
Great, thank you.
Just for reference, prior to going to this slide, it's fine, Carissa. For 2025 through May.
Sorry, I just
Chief.
want to make a point. I want to go back to what you said, Jen, and this chart, the fatalities, fatal collisions by district, I think goes to what you're saying about speed. That was the point you were making, right? There's more activity on the west side and central and
There's
Fiesta,
more
and
activity,
yet,
it's moving slower, but.
yeah, and yet the fatal collisions are higher.
The design of the
and-
streets on the
Yeah.
east side are very wide and very fast. And wherever those pain points are of these collisions and stuff, I think we need to look at the road design, because I don't think we can enforce our way out of it.
I mean, is that the conclusion you would draw a little bit too? Is that even though there's a lot more activity in Fiesta and Central, maybe, I guess I'm assuming that,
We'd have
at
to go-
Superstition, you have higher number of fatals.
You'd have to look at the data because you also have impairment, right, as a factor involved in things.
Okay.
You have speed as a factor. You could argue the roads are bigger out there, which allows for more speed, but what's the driver behavior look like? What are they doing? What do the roads look like? Because you're still seeing fatalities on the west side, even if you would call them at slower speeds, but I would have to look at the data to say, was it impairment that was involved in those fatalities? Was that a pedestrian/bicycle fatality? You'd have to look at all of those different avenues, or, red light running. And we do have that data, and we can definitely draw it and bring some specific data back to all of you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the relationship with the traffic counts could change the heat signature of this map. Thank you.
So the only comment I wanted to make, lastly, on the fatalities is that we did run the numbers through March 31st of 2025, and we have had 9 fatalities with 7 collisions in 2025 compared to 11 fatalities with 11 collisions in 2024. Every life that is saved is a good opportunity or a good thing for us, but obviously we're still concerned about the number of fatalities that we're having in the city. As you heard last week from OMB, additional savings have been identified for the general fund by using the local street sales tax. And what that will do is fund 12 of our traffic enforcement officers that are currently assigned specifically to traffic, right, outside of patrol. Patrol does traffic enforcement, but we have a subset of that where our traffic officers that are specifically, their daily mission is related to traffic enforcement and traffic education. So we're thankful for this opportunity to have this identified savings.
Just curious how you're going to use the resource. I mean, so those, are you going to put them in these hot spots? Are you going to target those more? I mean, I know that the data drives it, but the justification for the 12 more and how you use them is what?
Councilmember Goforth, it's not 12 additional.
Okay.
It's just our current makeup. We have 19 officers assigned to the traffic unit and 6 vehicular crimes detectives.
Okay.
So 12 of those are just getting
Different
funded from a different
Okay.
location,
Thank you.
which offsets the general fund.
So we're using transportation dollars to fund PD and instead of transportation dollars to fund street design.
Yeah, and that, Chris, is a question I have, because I brought this up in transportation, that we're shifting this to local street sales tax, and it's a allowable use. But it always comes at a cost, right? So potholes can create accidents, lack of street maintenance. Are we certain that shifting this 2.2 from local street sales tax into the PD budget for motors isn't going to create problems for our street maintenance?
As we looked at the current status of the transportation, I shouldn't use the word transportation, local sales tax fund, I got caught on the last side, it is, of all our funds, probably performing the best as far as what it has available in reserves. And we believe at least for the next 4 or 5 years, it could absorb this ongoing cost. And then I think the council needs to evaluate that in the future, whether it needs to shift back to maybe even a public safety sales tax relook. But for now, in an effort to, as you know, that kind of in this forecast, we're trying to buy time for the next 3 to 4 years. There's certainly enough capacity within the local street sales tax to absorb these positions that are going towards a lot of the things that are already happening in the transportation department, trying to make our streets safer. And as you heard, we already dedicate staff that are funded by the local sales tax to support PD today. And so obviously we're taking this to another level, but it is an eligible use, and based on the condition of the status of where we are in the general governmental fund, this seemed like, at least for the next 3 to 4 years, a way to provide some relief to the general governmental side.
I think this speaks to Councilmember Duff's concerns, and they're legitimate, is that, well, public safety is top priority of any community, when we start to see fingers of financing dipping into the other buckets, it's a concern. So I guess what I would ask is, if we're going to use this because there's sufficient funds to manage both your motor officers and maintain our streets, is there some kind of something we could put on the calendar to make sure that we look at this again in 2 years, in 3 years, so that we don't forget to say that, hey, we have other sources of funding, or we're seeing the sales tax rates increase, so we can move this funding out and put it back into streets before streets becomes a problem.
I'm sure the next city manager will put that on his calendar.
The next city manager? Can't wait to meet him.
Carry on, Chief.
Okay, thank you. As you can see, homicides are down in 2024 from 28 victims to 14. While there are no overarching theories, we did see a decrease from 25% to 7.14% in DV homicides. We also saw a decrease in victim suspect under 21 from 48.15% in 2023 to 23.08% in 2024. Additionally, mental health homicides in 2024 was 0 compared to 4 in 2023.
So say that again with the under 21?
So our victim suspects, so when we have, teen violence and young adult violence, we saw a reduction from 48.15% in 2023 to 23.0.
So is that related to the efforts you put into getting the Gilbert goons off the street?
Well, we only had, I think, one Gilbert goon, but no, it is absolutely, we have a group that meets specific for juvenile crime that incorporates the courts, probation, all of the schools, the PD, all of those things. And so all of this is related to dealing with these crimes, addressing these issues at an early part, getting better information and communication with the schools, holding the prosecutor's office and the courts accountable to, pushing forward these crimes when they do happen.
Fantastic.
That type of thing.
No, that's good news. Thank you.
Ms. Spilsbury.
What does the subtitle on this slide mean? 64.3% firearm-related homicide. What is that referring to?
It says 64.3% firearm-related homicides in 2024. That was the percentage of, so basically we had 9 out of our 14 homicides were with a firearm. Compared to 2023, 25 of our 27 were related to a firearm. And this also lends itself, would you agree, Lee, to our major crimes unit, our crime gun intelligence unit that we have implemented, where we now take ballistics and we put it into a system and we can match cases more quickly and join firearms that are used in multiple crimes, and it helps us solve those crimes and get those guns off the street.
So this is saying 64.3% of the total homicide number had firearms.
Right, 9 of the 14 compared
I
to
couldn't
25 of the
understand
20. Yes, we'll make an adjustment to make that more clear. But that is what it means. And the one thing I did want to address, if you see on 2024, it does show a 92.86% clearance rate. But as of April 1st, we actually did solve the final homicide of 2024. So we are at 100% clearance rate in homicide. And as far as a clearance rate, just for some clarification, so the FBI says a clearance rate is something that's cleared exceptionally or something that is cleared by an arrest. Either of those two things. So if something's inactivated or something goes cold case or something along those lines, and we don't inactivate homicides, they go cold case, but in other crimes we do inactivate, or maybe we unfound, those cases are not part of the clearance rate statistic. It is very specific that a clearance rate is you charged it or it was exceptionally cleared. What would equal an exceptionally cleared case might be a murder-suicide, right? Because we don't have anyone we can charge because it's a murder-suicide, or a suicide that we might have investigated, and it turned out, like we investigated initially as a homicide, and it turned out to be a suicide. So in our cases, We, just for a number I wanted to give you for perspective, of those 14 cases, 12 of them resulted in arrests and charging through the county attorney, and one was a murder-suicide and one was a suicide. So that just gives you perspective on the amazing work that our police department does. And this is the homicide unit, but it's coupled with so many other sub-units that support them in making these things come to fruition, which includes our real-time crime center, our major crimes unit, our violent offender unit, our SWAT team. Just all of these units are what brings us to this successful conclusion of solving these crimes.
Just on the map really quick, I'm looking at the legend. So the number is the beat number, and then the red dot is the homicide?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the number of.
Well, yeah, that's, I mean, when you just look at it, it looks like there were 22 incidents or 30, you know,
No,
anyways,
that's
so
those are our beats, yes.
beat
ma'am.
numbers, okay.
All right. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, earlier I had the opportunity to discuss with you staffing. I'd like to shift that conversation over to the technology, which is crucial in our crime fighting approach. So closed circuit television and the Downtown Initiative ties into the Real-Time Crime Center and the work we're doing with the Real-Time Crime Center. So the Downtown Initiative, MESA, was envisioned as a transformative effort to enhance safety and security within the heart of the city. It seeks to harness a cutting-edge technology to seamlessly integrate technology and data analytics. The Real-Time Crime Center has been central and continues to be central to that vision. It's designed to act as a hub for proactive crime prevention and rapid response. Advanced closed-circuit television systems were strategically deployed to monitor public spaces and provide real-time visibility into downtown activities. The initiative also utilizes automated license plate readers, pan-tilt zoom cameras as well, focusing on key areas such as ingress and egress points within the downtown area. We're looking at parks, parking garages, and also identified crime hotspots based on data analysis. Combining these tools with a commitment to leveraging actionable data, the initiative has successfully reduced crime and fostered a safe environment for residents and visitors. Through the Downtown Initiative, MESA embraces a forward-thinking approach to public safety that emphasizes the importance of technology-driven solutions. The coordinated use of camera systems and automated tools demonstrated a dedication to pinpointing and addressing vulnerabilities in high-risk areas. These efforts were about reacting to incidents and creating an atmosphere of deterrence and prevention. By investing in infrastructure, seamlessly integrating real-time information, MESA has positioned itself as a leader in security innovation. The initiative underscores the city's commitment to protecting its community while promoting a thriving downtown that people can confidently enjoy.
Quick question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Mayor. Jumping back just a moment to those homicide stats, Chief Nesbitt. How many of those solved cases relied in whole or part on the Real-Time Crime Center, say for the last 2 years?
I can't speak to the specific number, but what I can tell you is one of the things that the Real-Time Crime Center is absolutely doing is decreasing the amount of time it takes us to get to locating additional evidence and the suspect. We're finding that things that might have taken us weeks to uncover have taken us hours because of going back and looking at footage and the cameras and deliberately looking at information. But I can absolutely get that information for you.
Slide 19 has the real-time stuff too.
Oh,
Yeah, it
does it?
has.
Okay.
I don't know that it talks specifically though about like the homicide solve rate and.
Well, I think it's a great selling point for Real-Time Crime Center if you, and I'm just saying, if half of those were solved either as a result of or quickly, whatever. So I'd just like to see those numbers when convenient.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So this map does depict the deployment of the automated license plate readers, as well as the cameras that have been deployed. Those cameras fixed pan tilt zoom cameras, and you'll see the legend off to the right that gives you a better understanding. So to the east, we're looking at the boundary of Pioneer Park, to the north, University, Country Club to the west, and Maine to the south. So since its launch in 2021, the Real-Time Crime Center has far surpassed expectations, revolutionizing our approach to public safety. As its core lies a powerful network of seamless connectivity, bridging citizens in distress, real-time threat response capabilities, and an expansive citywide camera system. This integrated network enables the immediate detection of criminal activity and allows investigators to trace a suspect's actions leading up to a crime. The result, timely, effective collection of evidence, swift suspect identification, and rapid arrest bolster safety and justice across our community. To Council Members Adams' question, I would like to at least provide one example of a homicide that was investigated by the Real-Time Crime Center. In late 2024, the Real-Time Crime Center operators monitoring through Live 911, meaning that they had an opportunity to listen directly to the conversation between the 911 operator and the caller. So monitoring through Live 911 intercepted a report of a shooting near Center and McKellips. The caller described a harrowing scene. A woman at a bus stop was shot by a man, believed to have fled the scene in a red pickup truck. The suspect was described as a husky male with shaggy hair. Leveraging the power of our camera network, the Real-Time Crime Center team sprang into action. While some operators focused on the live feeds to track the suspect's vehicle, others viewed footage for critical evidence. In a pivotal breakthrough, they discovered the shooting had been captured on video. The footage showed a man in a red pickup truck arrive at a gas station. He exited the truck, walked to the sidewalk, and from approximately 30 feet away, opened fire on a woman. After the horrific act, the suspect calmly returned to the truck and drove off. Thanks to the synchronized efforts of the Real-Time Crime Center, their operators, and their ability to combine live and recorded video, the suspect vehicle was quickly located. Responding officers were directed to the scene, initiating a pursuit. Remarkably, within 6 minutes, the 6 minutes of the shooting, the suspect was apprehended, bringing a swift end to a tragic episode. And this is one of many cases that Chief Nesbitt will be able to point out when she provides your request, the connectivity between the work that the Real-Time Crime Center does and the work that the officers on the streets ultimately accomplish.
Chief Rankin, what are the purple dots on the map?
The purple dots on the map were locations, and I'm sorry that it's not in the legend. There were locations that originally were going to be used for camera sites. One of the challenges that we found when we looked at where we would deploy the technology is power source. If there was a power source, was there adequate power? So when we look at the parks, we're looking at options beyond fiber for cost savings. We're looking at options away from the existing poles that exist in the park, but because we've determined that there's low voltage there that can't support a camera system. So what we're currently doing is we're piloting a gridless solar option in a couple parks, and then we're doing the same thing in Clyman and Escobedo. So those were locations that we were going to use that ultimately we decided would not be in our best interest because of the cost impact.
Thank you, Chief. Carry on.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Before you is the department financial summary. Oh, I might say I'm Crystal York, the police fiscal manager for the department. Before you is the department financial summary. We have last year's actuals, the current year budget, as well as the proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26. I kind of want to highlight a couple of key points on here for your reference. If you look at the current year, fiscal year 24-25, as compared to fiscal year 23-24, you'll notice a 36.3 million variance. That variance, over 50% of it, 17.5 million, is related to personal services. That includes not only the merits we have received for the current fiscal year, but additional staffing, as well as additional funding we received for overtime. Additionally, in the current year's budget, our within Community Services Bureau is we received 3.2 million to help offset our repairs and maintenance, the increase we're seeing within our fleet, to help cover those costs during the fiscal year. And then we have some ongoing software license and maintenance renewal increases, the biggest one being our contract negotiation with our body-worn camera. Additionally, in fiscal year 24-25, there's some one-time funds that you're seeing. That's what's kind of driving up some of those numbers. We have within Professional Services Bureau, $3.5 million for our evidence facility, the completion of that capital improvement project. So that got them up and running and fully operational. Additionally, within the Community Services Bureau, there is $9.3 million for FF&E, for the furniture, fixture, and equipment for the headquarters remodel, that capital improvement project that's set to take off. So those funds will be carried over to assist with that into the future years. And then we have also for the current year, to the point we've been discussing, the Real-Time Crime Center, the CCTV cameras, all that expansion, there's about $5 million sitting in there for the current fiscal year as well. For next fiscal year, for the proposed budget for 25-26, the personal services increase is 19 million. And that is for not only the merits for the professional staff and sworn, but also the benchmarking for the sworn. And you can really kind of see that highlighted if you look at our Operations Bureau. That is where we have our patrol districts, and over 63% of our sworn staffing is expensed there. So you can see in the 126 million for next year, that's really kind of highlighting the benchmarking and the merits. And then I'd like to also mention that as we have for the current year, previous years, and proposed for next year, we also have funds budgeted for the unfunded PSPRS, the Public Safety Pension Retirement System, the sworn pension liability, 11.6 million budgeted there. Is there any questions?
So Mayor and Council, we were talking about this a little bit earlier about, public safety is really important. It's our top priority, but you kind of get a sense that it's also creating tremendous pressure on the rest. Just if you look at the bottom line, the year end in 23-24 was 278 million. Today, the proposed budget is nearly $40 million more. You think about what's happening with our revenues and resources coming in, they're actually flattening out or declining. This is part of that pressure, right, that we're talking about, that's creating this imbalance between the funds coming into the city and what we're spending it on. And, there's been individuals are talking about that and bringing that up to the council, and it's true. I mean, it's because we are dealing with tremendous pressure with inflationary pressure, wage increases, and of course the loss of revenue. So this probably is a slide that kind of highlights that challenge ahead for the council. And the council, I think, in the near future is going to have to consider, like many of your peer cities around the valley are thinking about, well, how do we address this? We can't just keep going on with the same resources that we rely on today. We may have to consider supplementing that. But you see public safety is probably the main driver and those sources of the city that are putting that pressure where growing sources are going much faster than the resources coming to support the city. And this is a pretty good example of that. It's about $40 million just since 23-24.
Thank you. Ms. Spilsbury.
Could I just get a list, a summary of what falls under each of these categories? I think that's what I may be missing a little bit, is like what exactly we're talking about under each of these. I can make some assumptions, but if I could get I don't know if you guys have some sort of summary or
100%,
something.
yes, absolutely, Councilmember.
Perfect. Thank you. That would help me, I think, understand this a little bit better.
All right.
And maybe what you just went over, like what some of those big, 17 million or 15 million, or what some of those bigger numbers, if those could just be explained out to me as well, would be helpful.
Will do.
Okay, good morning, Mayor, Council. As part of the city's overall general fund reduction process this year, the department was tasked with reducing our general fund budget by $5 million spread out over 3 years. And the number you'll see right here is actually $5.35 million. That $355,000 is actually representative of a budget adjustment request that you'll see just a little bit later in the slide for a real-time crime center. So their total reduction amount over 3 years is $5.35 million. The areas that we focused on were what you'll see here is an incentive program of perfect attendance, a reduction in expenditures across the department, and some professional staff reductions, and I'll cover those in detail in the next slide. For expenditure reductions, we're reducing our undercover buy funds by $100,000. Overall materials and supplies across the entire department was a reduction of 10%, and then continued reduction in overtime in the amount of $1 million. So in expenditures, we were at $1.4 million, just slightly over that for this current proposed fiscal year. And then the only staff reductions you'll see here are 2 part-time non-benefited positions out of a total of 8 positions that are downtown engagement team members, as well as 4 part-time benefited positions in the public safety telecommunicator positions. Currently, 6 of the 10 are filled in addition to 2 unbudgeted positions. So currently we have 8 of the telecommunicator positions in this classifications that are filled, and that comes to the $275,000. Chris?
This slide is our budget adjustment request. It includes not only the top one is the Solari, the Mesa's Crisis Service, which is our Solari CBI we're using over in comms to divert some of the mental health calls. It is currently being funded under ARPA funds, and so it is now being transferred over to the general fund for funding.
Can I just say, this is another one of those, I don't know if I'm trying to write the word, methods, maybe approaches to help make our sworn officers be more efficient, right? By having this response from these professionals that deal with mental health, they can get to the scene, and because we've funded, how many units do we have just for Mesa? Is it, I don't know, four that are just assigned to Mesa? It helps get that response to those officers much quicker than it was before, and it helps to resolve that issue in a way that the officers can rely upon the Solari professionals to kind of step in and take over the scene. And so to me, this is another kind of one of those force multipliers for the police department that gets them out of this engagement and frees them up. So again, we can compare how many officers we have per 1,000, but then how many cities have a service like this that really helps make more efficient use of our sworn personnel.
Ms. Spilsbury.
I love that we do these mental health crisis teams, and we get attention for it nationwide, I know. So I'm super proud of it and glad that we're going to continue to fund it. Is there a cost savings when we are not sending out sworn personnel on some of these calls? I know it's good in so many other ways.
It's an efficiency. It's because, if we were a business, you would kind of determine, well, how many officers can we do without, right? But that's not what we do. We say, well, we're going to create an efficiency, so Solari comes, now the officers can go
do just
spend
other
something
things.
else,
Okay,
right? We don't.
so it's not a
like
cost
we can say,
savings.
oh, well, we can hire 5 less officers this year. Well, we
Okay.
would never do that, but we make them more effective.
Okay.
Again, that's why I always make the point. You can look at a lot of metrics. It's kind of like, and it's that chart on crime rate. Where do we fall there? You can talk all about staffing levels, and they're important, but at the end of the day, we're using real-time crime centers, we're using drones, we're using Solari, we're using a lot of other ways to provide, to make that number stay low.
Okay, and I mean, obviously, I think the benefits of what it does for the actual people who are needing
Absolutely.
help is amazing and de-escalates, all the things. I think it's great. So I guess I just never, I think I probably thought there was like a cost savings to that, but it makes sense that we're just now using our sworn officers in more effective places or whatever. Okay.
I was just curious how that number differs from last year's fiscal year.
I mean, it's the same. I think we're just carrying on the cost. I think we have a contract that goes for a while, right?
Oh, okay.
It's similar. It's just where the funding is coming from. Instead of being paid for from ARPA funds, we're now that dollar, or those funds are now expired. So now we want to, the council indicated this as a priority. We agree. So we put it in the, we got to put it in the general fund budget.
I'm just wondering, as we go forward, is that a method of public safety that we just assume is going to continue into the future? Are we going to kind of track? I don't know.
Well, we can always come back and report to council.
Yeah.
I would say now we've built it into the forecast as an assumption that we're going to continue. This is the approach we're going to use going forward.
Well, I think these ARPA funds, don't they go through 2026?
Right. So this picks up
so,
at the end of, when they expire.
So we're looking at 26, 27 for
Or is
general
this only
fund.
half of the fiscal year then?
This current fiscal year.
This current
Yeah,
fiscal
sorry.
year.
Yeah. It's beginning of, it's the end of, yeah.
Of 26.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I guess I would say, I just don't think it should be an assumptive
Okay.
resource. I think it's great, but we need to make sure that it's necessary going forward too.
We can always
right?
have this
Because-
conversation, and I think it'd be good, Public Safety Committee, maybe get a report
sure.
on, the amount of time we're using them and how that works. Certainly, we can do that.
Well, we had one team before, now we stood up a second team
Mm-hmm.
that's totally dedicated to Mesa. And I think the discussion is the funding mechanism. When you said general fund, I think we're all thinking that the general fund was funding it, but it's ARPA monies in the general fund
Previously,
for
now-
25, 26.
Right. For this next budget year.
And then 26, 27, I think that's the decision-making that we're going to have to make within a year.
Wait a minute, wait.
No.
I think
No.
this is general fund on this.
Is this
budget.
general fund dollars? Okay.
It-
Starting July
And it's for a
1.
full year, it's not a half year funded by ARPA and half.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. Okay. My mistake. Carry on.
Mayor, quick question, please.
Oh, Mr. Adams.
Since I wasn't on council at the time, I'm curious about programs, this one in particular, since we're discussing it. When we stood up programs funded by ARPA funds or other federal funds, there was something of I'll call them a windfall. Was there thought given to what happens when those funds run out? Or did we take advantage of the funds and say that when those funds are termed out, we'll deal with it then? What was just help me, not in great depth, but what was the general thinking when we stood up a program using those funds?
So, yeah, thank you. So, Mayor, Councilmember Adams, what we did, if you go back and look at the types of funding projects for ARPA, the majority of them are projects, right? They're in one-time expenditures. But when we were going through, when these dollars became available across the country, and certainly we were experiencing a lot of mental health responses from public safety, and we had the opportunity, and staff did an amazing job of identifying that there was a resource out there. I remember really making the presentation, but it just was like we were waiting 45 minutes for a response right on some of these. And so we went and talked to Solari and said, hey, we need to improve that. And it was a pilot program, to be honest, right? And we've tried it now for 3 years that we've been doing. And I think the success you could hear around, I'll let the sworn officers talk about that, has been so successful and so important to us, as opposed to us standing up internally, a mental health response team, having these experts who do this across the county. It just kind of suggested that, yeah, this was one of those programs we needed to stand up and continue to support. But most of the projects on ARPA that you would see that we could show you the report on, the majority of them are capital, their projects are one-time expenses. Because we're very sensitive to creating those ongoing obligations. But this was one where we felt like if we hadn't funded in ARPA, we needed to figure out how to do it within the general governmental services anyway.
And Mayor, and we're happy to come report and even get in the weeds on the amount of calls that are diverted, because it's two-pronged. The calls that are diverted at dispatch and they're trained is 2,700 plus calls. I mean, we're averaging almost 3,000 calls per year that are diverted. Officers aren't going to that. So it is an interesting question. Like if you dove deeper, and I think you could prove this out, is if the officers aren't responding to that, how often were we using force, on some of these calls with our folks that are having mental crisis, and the police had to deal with it. I would imagine that's significant. So that's just in the diverted calls. The officers don't even know they're not going on those anymore, and they used to handle those calls. So it does allow us to have that level of service. And then it was hour and a half, almost 2 hours at times, for our officers to get a crisis team to come deal with a situation that was non-criminal. So to have these teams has absolutely been a huge win for the city, and especially when you look, and you all have been around the country and see so many different co-responder models that have, quite frankly, missed the mark. I can just tell you from my standpoint, this has been a big success, and we'd be happy to report out on it.
Mr. Reddy has a question.
Yeah, no, thank you. Chief Wessing, you touch on overtime. Is there, keep hearing, overtime is an issue, and is there other steps to look at overtime and seeing how we can reduce that piece?
Yes, Councilmember Heredia, there is actually a slide at the end of the presentation that will cover our overall overtime reduction strategy since we met last year for the budget presentation discussion on overtime.
Perfect.
All right. Carry on. Who's next?
Me,
I keep
Mayor,
looking here.
Vice Mayor, Council. We're losing track. So
We got one more coming, so.
just to speak a little bit to the Sergeant and Management Assistant too for real-time crime. So as the Real-Time Crime Center continues to evolve and grow, this project has turned into a program that requires oversight. When the Real-Time Crime Center opened, staffing included one operator and one sergeant who oversees, that sergeant also oversees the East Valley Fusion Center. Since that time, the Real-Time Crime Center has grown to 10 full-time operators, 4 sworn and 6 professional staff, working 7 days a week, and they work between 10 and 24 hours a day. We do have 2 sworn vacancies for the Real-Time Crime Center operations. When filled, the Real-Time Crime Center will move to a 24/7 operation platform. The existing sergeant also covers our East Valley Fusion, who we partner with 7 additional agencies and ATF. These additional members bring his responsibility to 11 direct reports with functional supervision of 7 or more. The existing sergeant currently works day shift. With the growth of the Real-Time Crime Center, a swing shift sergeant is needed to ensure that the Real-Time Crime Center is operating efficiently and maximizes the potential to support patrol, reduce crime, and enhance public safety. So adding this sergeant to the Real-Time Crime Center will increase supervisors' coverage, improve crime response, increase efficiency and accountability, and optimize resources. The management assistant, if I can just speak to a minute on that, what is going on right now is DOIT currently is managing this system because it was getting set up. Now that it is going to be a program, we need someone who can do all of those things that our DOIT counterpart does, and our police department's information technology staffing doesn't allow for it. So the management assistant would basically deal with all of the technology that is coming in there, because technology is constantly evolving, and so we need someone to stay on top of that, to stay on top of our contracts, to address issues that we're having with our vendors, to ensure that we are operating to the fullest extent of what needs to happen. So by adding the MA2, we ensure the Real-Time Crime Center operates efficiently as well, and does all the things that we expect it to do to support our patrol operations.
And just quickly, This is another great example of ARPA. I know I'm just going to take this opportunity. ARPA dollars help stand up the technology and the build out of the center, and then we've been staffing it up with the general governmental. But again, it's kind of that, how do we use ARPA dollars? We did use it to stand up, I guess, the technology and the build out of the center, and then now we're continuing to add to the staffing of that.
Ms. Spilsbury.
How long has the East Valley Fusion Center been a thing, and has it always been called that? I don't know why that's like a new thing to me.
It's like
2007.
Yes.
So it's been around a long time. Do we just
Yes.
not hear about it very much? I don't know.
Maybe it just doesn't ring out. Maybe you hear ACTIC, that's something like, so that's, you know, our bigger statewide, but Fusion has been incorporated. What it does is totally separate from real time. So the partners feed information of crime that is happening on our borders, and then it allows our analysts to delve into that and uncover maybe common trends, and it enhances communication with our brothers and sisters around us. It helps us get suspect information, solve crime, solve trends. For example, the Gilbert Goons is a prime example of when that was happening in Gilbert, that's exactly what we did. We went into our analytics and we looked and said, do we have any occurrences similar that we should be paying attention to? And so maybe we need to do a better job of marketing the Fusion Center. But when you went to your tour at the Real-Time Crime Center, they were the analysts that was sitting, if you envision where the screens are, sitting in the arm of that room. Those are where our Fusion analysts are.
I guess maybe I haven't heard it called that, or I don't know. Okay. I'm glad that that's happening and that it's been happening.
Thank you.
So this is our Real-Time Crime Center chart. We are going to work towards improving it, and we are constantly improving the data that we're capturing to really help explain what it is that the Real-Time Crime Center does. But as you heard Lee, he talked about the benefits of the CCTV project to the downtown area. And to fully embrace the benefits of this technology, we need the Real-Time Crime Center to be housed with operators. This slide has a lot of valuable information, and this slide is actually on our SharePoint, so you can always go to it. It's live updated through Power BI, so it's constantly being pulling data to show what's going on. And so we are just tracking our overall mission in public safety. I'll let you guys look at it and let me know if you have specific questions, because there is a lot of information. But basically it talks about how we assist, what tools we're utilizing, our activity resources. And then if you look on the bottom, you can see that our Real-Time Crime Center is first on scene 65% of the time. And so that is valuable information that's being fed to our patrol officers that are responding to crimes in progress.
Okay.
Well, there's
Is the new drone program that you guys are doing, does that come into play with the Real-Time Crime Center? Like, are those cameras part of Real-Time Crime Center?
Yes, so we have what was placed on top of 20 East Main here, Councilmember Spilsbury, is our drone as first responder. Now, we've had that program in place. What has changed is the docking station and the operations of that docking station. So our drones are operated by our Real-Time Crime Center operators.
Okay.
And so everything, cameras, our patrol drones, our mini drones, our specialty drones, our drone as first responder, all of that is feeding into the Real-Time Crime Center and providing information. And I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to see our latest Instagram post with the robbery that happened, where you should take an opportunity to look at it, because what it'll show is our helicopters camera system, along with our drone system, along with our patrol officers, and how we were able to capture the suspect in that robbery within about 2 hours.
Wow, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next few slides, we're going to talk about staffing. First and foremost, I just wanted to talk about the commitment to growth since the inception of the public safety sales tax since fiscal year 1920. when that went into effect. We have grown both sworn and professional staff today by 131 positions, and you can see the breakdown. 56 of those, or 43%, are specifically officers in patrol. 29% or 22% are reflective of other sworn positions, and as in keeping with our overall percentages of sworn versus professional staff, 35% of those positions that are supported by the public safety sales tax are professional staff, which leads us into the overall staffing of the Northeast Station, which I'll turn over to Chief Cutler.
Chief, question, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. What percentage of the sworn staffing is supported by the transfer of funds from the utility fund into the PD and fire budget? Do you know?
Councilmember Summers or Vice Mayor Summers, I do not have that information,
Okay, could we get that?
Sure.
We don't do it. I mean, it's just a transfer to the fund. Are you asking what's the equivalent?
So it's just the general fund.
Right, but it doesn't. It's just a general fund, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what percentage that would be.
Of their
from the
budget.
transfer, yeah. Because, I mean, obviously, that's a key funding source for PD and or for public safety as a whole, right? And I'm wondering what the impact on that is for the general fund and how many officers and what. Did you look at that
The
once?
whole dollars, because you can't do it by officers, the whole.
Because you pick it up, put it in the general fund,
Yeah,
and then it's
just feeds the
spent out of the
general fund.
general
Well, if you want
fund.
to keep it simple, I think we're transferring about $135 million
Right.
from the utility fund to the general fund, and then you're saying what percent of that goes to PD?
So the easiest
or
way to do that,
officers?
that is to say, in the general fund,
But
PD, fire and PD take up 60% of the total general fund budget. So of that $130 million transfer, 60% of that goes to public safety.
Okay, so.
That's because there's no
That's the
like
easy way to break it
dedicated,
down.
so yeah.
Yeah, and I get it, it's complicated, right?
Well,
So-
no, it's not. It's pretty
No,
simple,
it's-
actually, because it's just say, here's the totality of the budget in the general fund. How much of that goes to public safety? 60%. You have a transfer of $130 million that just goes to the general fund. So 60% of that goes to support public safety. Then so that's how we kind of look at it. And frankly, it becomes even after, there's a public safety transfer, right? That's from the utilities.
Utility.
And there's also a 5% general fund. Well, the general governmental transfer of 5%, 60% of that is also going to. So the majority, easily 75, 80% of that transfer is supporting public safety. Now, I don't want to sit there and say, well, we tied it specifically to a position, but you could easily say, 80% of that transfer supports the public safety department.
Like the 25%.
What is it? Oh,
It's higher. It's even higher than that.
25% of the enterprise
Oh,
fund
75.
goes into the general fund, and it represents like a third of public safety's total budget, something like that.
so they're saying it's closer to 80%.
Yeah, I thought the whole transfer went to, right?
No,
5% goes to.
it's two parts, right? It's two parts.
Right, but it's a total of 30%, and 25% goes to public safety, and 5% goes to general, but of the 5%, 60% goes to
There you
public
go.
safety. But I don't think you just said that, but
You're
that's
right.
what you
I
meant,
did.
right?
You're
Okay.
right. What I was trying to
Okay.
say, but of the general governmental fund,
Okay,
right? So,
Of the
so you're right,
5%.
100 and,
So mayor, council, so we'll say about 135 million was transferred. Of that, about 120 million of that goes to public safety. So the calculation is 30% of the operating revenues from the utility get transferred over. 25% is dedicated directly to public safety. And then there's still others in that 5% that support public safety. So if you take the 135 million or you take the 25 divided by 30, that's about 85%. So 85% of that dollar amount, the 135, is what supports public safety. So it's about 120, 125 million of that transfer goes towards public safety. To give it into context about the general governmental fund, public safety budget is about $500 million. So with that 120 helps support that $500 million budget.
Let me
I was.
let me ask this, where is the other
30%.
25, yeah, 25 of 30, and that gets confusing because it's not really a percentage, I get it. So that 5% that doesn't transfer into public safety, where does that go?
So all of it just goes into the general governmental fund. It goes into the general fund. And so with that, we can see how much is actually spent by public safety, which is about $500 million. So we allocate that $120 million into the general fund as part of that support. It goes along also with our sales tax, city sales tax, supports the general governmental fund, which supports public safety, also the state shared revenue, so portions of those support the public safety.
So I assume a portion of that 5% also goes to public safety, or
That is-
public safety related uses.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, that is correct. So some of that 5% does still support public safety in the general governmental fund.
So I guess a question I have going back in some of the slides, we don't have to go back. We're looking to transfer 2.2 million from the local streets tax to funding motors. Is there maybe room to use more of that 5% that goes to public safety anyway to fund that rather than stripping it out of
It just means
the
your
local?
transfer increases.
The percentage, yeah.
Well,
I'm just
dollar-
wondering as an option.
Well,
Why does your transfer?
I think he means the percentage.
You said the 5%, you're saying of the 5%?
Out of the 5%.
Oh, then we just have to reduce the general fund, governmental we have to reduce.
Right, so where does that 5% go to the other not related to public safety?
It's just spread across the whole city. It's
And
not-
what's the better move?
40%.
Well, this just means you have to go find $2.2 million more in reductions somewhere else. in the
Somewhere
city.
else. It'd be interesting to seeing it if that,
Well,
because even coming out of the streets fund, it has to come out of the streets, right? And I know we've been reassured that at least for the next few years, we can do that without negatively impacting the streets, but there's still a long list of streets improvements that need to be made. And I just want to know if there are options, and maybe that's not a viable option, it's a question.
Overall, a concept I was thinking about, if we looked at the percentage of public safety overall in our budget and what that has been over the last 5 years, is it a growing percentage? And I assume it will be just because of our cut in revenues from the state doing their thing, right? And if we project over the next 5 years what that percent will be, I question whether, because we only can absorb so much in tightening our budget in a growing city with more capital expenses, that we look at increasing a public safety sales tax. I don't know. I think, this is painful to talk about it this year, but we're going to be going through this for at least 4 to 5 years. We're projecting to go forward. So knowing if we think that is really crimping down on how we function as a city, and it takes sometimes up to 2 years to get something on the ballot and get voter approval and get it into exercised, that we think about it for maybe even 26. I don't know at what pain point do we wait based on projections before we take some kind of measure. Other cities are doing this in a variety of ways and to offset all the state cuts, so that we can maintain being great cities. What is that we need to do? Can we withstand this? I don't know. So there's my overall thought on the budget.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Adams, do you have a question for Brian?
Yeah, real quick, Brian, before you go, you're going to think I'm a slow learner. But I just want to clarify my understanding. When you say 30% of operating utility revenues, in my private sector mind, operating revenue is gross income, then there are operating expenses, we have net revenue or loss. Which number is that again for my benefit? The gross utility revenues billed or the net that operation generates?
So Mayor, Councilmember Adams, it is the gross revenues. It's the very first number that you do. Government, yes, government does gross in revenues, but then they also gross up their expenditures. So we have 3 numbers. It's your gross revenues minus your gross expenditures, equal your net uses and sources and uses, or your net income. So those are the three numbers. So it's the gross revenue that is billed. That is then where that calculation gets to the percentage.
Thank you.
Again, Mayor and Council, just a reminder, when we showed you the general governmental funds, we're going to project that we're going to use $714 million the end of this year. Next year's forecast is down to 710. So where's the pressure? Its sources were 692 last year. They're only going to be 648 this year. So it's both there is an expense issue here, but a lot of it is a change in sources. So.
Thank you, Brian. Chief?
Go ahead, Chris.
Or
Morning,
who's
Mayor and
next?
Council. Myself.
Okay.
Assistant Chief Jeff Cutler for the Patrol Operations Division. I'm here to talk about the Northeast Public Safety Facility, our opening this summer. Along with this, we had to redistrict the entire city for our now 5 patrol districts. As Chief Costa mentioned, this is the first time we've opened a new district since 1998. So we went through an extensive process, redistricting using our data analysis and data scientists to evaluate where we're going to draw the boundaries. We utilized our staff, our officers, sergeants, lieutenants to help us with that, so it's efficient for them to. So as you can see on this picture, this is what the district's going to look like. The yellow is the new Northeast Public Safety Facility or Division for Patrol. And then that'll open this summer, and we'll start our operations out of there. Go to the next slide. So we'll have a ribbon cutting on May 21st. That'll be our time that we'll officially open the building on the ribbon cutting, but we won't start operations there until the summer because we also have to move all our equipment in, our staff, and get the place outfitted for our actually running of operations. So staffing levels for that division will be about 81 total sworn personnel. 54 of those will be patrol officers. The rest will be detectives in the CIU, street crimes, and also our administrative, our supervisory staff.
Question, Chief.
What's the new district going to be called?
Northeast Public Safety Division.
But, so that's the divot, so Red Mountain Superstition Northeast.
Northeast,
Okay.
that's right.
That's creative.
Yes. So our service levels, just for example, I'm going to go back. Our service levels, we divided up amongst the different divisions. So using our workload analysis, the new stations can take about 15.5% of the workload. And that's, we don't want to make the division too big, then you run into geographical issues to you're traveling too far. So where example, Central will take 23% of the workload, and 15% will go to the Northeast Division. Some of our resources that we'll have out there it'll be a full functioning police station, just like every other one. We'll have community action officers, we'll have a crime prevention officer, a full squad of CIU detectives, to start off with 4 detectives and a street crimes squad, and then same other equipment that you would have at any other patrol division. So it'll be a full functioning patrol division. One of the metrics we're going to use to evaluate how effective the opening of the station is, as we've talked about before, response times on the east side. So we're hopeful that this will show a reduction in our response times. Through data analysis, we've shown that wherever we have a station, the surrounding area radius, we show a decrease in response times around that station. And it's big on the west side because our stations are closer together. Now we add this 5th district, we should see a drastic decrease in response times in the northeast part of our city.
Just over 6 years ago, we conducted a staff study, and as part of our strategic plan of growth, really to support the Northeast Substation, this graph really shows the overall growth in sworn from that time to get us to where we are today to support the opening of the new Northeast Substation. In the slide, you'll notice the large blue graph is the total authorized budgeted sworn numbers. Currently, it's at 844. With the inclusion of the Real-Time Crime Center Sergeant in the upcoming budget, that brings us to 845. That yellow line on the bottom is indicative of the public safety sales tax supported positions. So you can see that growth is in alignment with the last slide I had. But what I really want to draw your attention to is the blue line above. We've talked about this before. The chief mentioned it, which is our pipeline officers. So currently we have 41 actual vacant budgeted sworn positions in the department. We have 90 currently in one form of training that aren't part of that budgeted positions. And what that allows us to do, as you may be aware, from the date that a member starts the police academy, it takes almost a full 12 months before they're really able to work as a solo functioning police officer. And at that point, then they move into those current budgeted positions. And this allows us to stay ahead of the curve. This is really a game changer for us, and it has been for the past 6 years. We're the only city that I'm aware of that actually does this, and this doesn't come without the support of council and city management. We do look at 20 years of historical data to determine the number of people we should hire, and we take into consideration known retirements and also unexpected separations, which we saw a huge increase during the pandemic years and some of the social unrest that was happening around the country that really made it extremely difficult to recruit qualified applicants. And by allowing us to do that, we are able to stay ahead of the curve. We're now back to our historical norms of unexpected separations of about 24 sworn members a year, which is what we experienced around 2019 and 2020. I do anticipate that pipeline officer number to start to decrease. Our projections are showing that at the conclusion of the upcoming fiscal year, we'll be as close to, if not fully staffed, with all of our sworn positions in the department. And if you just look here in the Phoenix metro area, all of our large organizations are facing 20 or greater vacancy rates. Some of our smaller agencies are facing vacancy rates of 10 to 12%. Here at Mesa, for our sworn patrol ranks, our vacancy rate is 4%. That's 16 vacant positions in patrol. Our overall budgeted sworn is 5%, which equates to 42. Now, we also look at our professional staff, which are a critical component to our success and our deployment model. With 575 budgeted positions, 51 of those are currently vacant at 9%, and our overall vacancy rate is 7%, with 100 total vacant budgeted positions currently today.
Quick question, please.
Yep.
Chief Wessing, you mentioned, did you say 24 anticipated unexpected separations? What can you break those down for me, or are those, what are those?
Councilmember Adams, what those really are is people that resign. They choose a different line of work. Sometimes there's separations for performance issues, maybe a termination. Oftentimes people are in the drop program and they leave sooner than they, if they are in a 5-year program, they leave unexpectedly in those 3 years. It's anything that's just out of the norm.
And maybe medical retirements?
Exactly. Another one would be medical retirements for injuries, either job-related or otherwise, but all those combined. What we saw during the pandemic years was just like a 50% increase of people leaving for just leaving the profession. Mm-hmm. And that's now brought us to where we are today. We're back to our historical norms of about 24 in a given fiscal year that leave unexpectedly.
Are we losing any of those to other departments for greater pay, greater benefits, or is that a problem?
This is an interesting discussion because over 50% of our members that leave in law enforcement to lateral to another organization come back to us. So we have lost a couple to some agencies because they either liked the city as far as the crime that they would be investigating. Sometimes they're chasing money, and eventually they realize that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's still green, it's still grass. And more often than not, those members do come back to us. I think what council and city management have done by making us as competitive as we are has really kind of calmed those issues with retention related to the dollars. I think where we've been successful is investing in our people. Chief Butler talked about our wellness initiatives, and when we go through the hiring process and we meet with our recruits as they get ready to graduate, they tell us the reason why they chose Mesa, because they're all applying with multiple agencies at an individual time. And the reason why they chose us because they seemed like we cared. We called, we reached out to them, we brought them through the process. We have a pre-hire program that we bring in our police recruits months ahead of time to get them prepared. Those are the things that are differentiating ourselves right now from a lot of our other agencies here locally.
Thank you. Vice Mayor has a question.
I'm just noticing, the professional staff vacancy rate at 9%. So do we have an optimal sworn to professional staff percentage that we're looking at trying to maintain, or no?
On the vacancy rate?
No, just for professional staff.
Well, the 60/40, I think.
60/40. Are we still trying to hire that professional staff? What's the reason that it's 9%? Are we just having more turnover there? Is it intentional vacancies?
They have to deal with council.
Yeah, Vice
Have to
Mayor
deal with
Summers, I can
council.
answer that. There's several reasons. Certainly, there's never, in any of these vacancies, is there a deliberate act on our behalf not to hire them. The challenges that we've been faced with some of our professional staff positions, quite frankly, the public sector is paying more. It's easier for, even to try to retain some of our, like just our PDIT folks, it's easier to go Google because they can still work from home in their pajamas, and we require them to actually work in the workplace. And so the challenge that we have with competing with the private sector, as we started to see wages increasing significantly, some of our entry-level positions weren't competitive even with working at Target. And so that's really been a challenge for us, with recruiting. Now that goes into the benefits package that we offer that the private sector may not. Some of the things like our Lifetime Medical has spoken to a lot of our professional staff recruiting efforts. And some of it's turnover in the area of communications. They've been challenged with turnover over the past several years, and it's something that we're continually working to mitigate those issues. But there's various reasons why that is. I'm hopeful with a lot of our current recruitment efforts that you'll see a significant change in that in the next fiscal year.
And I'm just glad that you're working on that, because during the recession, when we cut back a lot on professional staff, even where I was working, not having that professional staff slowed down my job, and I think it's probably even worse in PD given what that professional staff does. So having that staff support is critical. So thank you I'm glad you're working on that.
Were you working?
Was I working? I used to be working.
The final slide of our presentation is our overtime picture. Last year, we presented a very similar slide, and we heard very loudly from both council and city management that we needed to do something to change the trajectory of our overtime. I really want you to pay attention to a few of the colored lines. One would be the red line. That was predicted overtime for all of PD if no changes had occurred. That's what we were looking at last year, a continued, significant increase year over year, which was really not sustainable. If we did nothing and just remained the same, the blue line is the average overtime per week for all of PD, and at its peak, it was about 5,813 hours per week. In May of last year, we really took a significant look at our operations from top down and bottom up on ways that we could mitigate overtime. First and foremost, we looked at current policy. Were we following our current policy, and was it in alignment with city policy? And so we went out and created several work groups in the department that at every division, it was across the board, all overtime had to have a certain set level of approval, and we did discover some inefficiencies where that approval wasn't happening. Some of the other things we've done working with the city performance data excellence team is providing tools to not only our commanders, but our lieutenants and sergeants where they're managing overtime on a daily and weekly basis. There must be approval for those, and there's accountability that comes to me and obviously to Chief Cost each month on where that overtime is, and there's if there's a spike or not a reduction, the accountability goes directly down to that commander's what is happening and why is that happening. And sometimes it's out of our control. Seasonally, you'll see a slight spike here at the very end. This is when we have all our large-scale community events, where there's marathon, the spring training events. Some of those things are a little bit outside of our control, but now we're able to even tell you where the overtime is truly being occurred. And what we did find is that with our critical and basic staffing levels, that has stayed relatively very similar across the board. So we're not reducing the officer safety factor for our officers working the street. But I'll give you an example, for instance, in training that I am responsible for. Do I need 5 people here working overtime for this event? Can we do this with fewer people? And it's more of a need versus what we would prefer. And so each area has had to take a look at their day-to-day operations and then present the justification for that overtime. And what we're seeing so far is that average weekly overtime since we started that project has been reduced by 35%. Overall reduction of overtime since the project started right now is just over 26%. And assuming our current reduction continues, it expected it will be a 30% reduction of overall overtime by the end of June. That equates to just over $6 million to put a dollar figure to it. Now it's fluid, it can change, but that really is where we're at. And I think it's a testament to, one, we heard the message loud and clear last year, and here's what we've implemented, and the results speak for themselves. Now there's more work to be done. We mentioned earlier in the reduction, there will be another $1 million reduction in overtime. So there is more work to be done. We are working with the city performance team on identifying areas of efficiencies. And also we're now auditing all of our divisions on specific overtime. We just recently completed our first overtime audit with our compliance unit to ensure that we're in compliance. Quite frankly, I'm very pleased with the direction that we're going. We were told by some people that we couldn't do it. We couldn't move the ship, but we did it. And there's work to be done still with overtime because it was at where we were last year really at a very unsustainable point.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, Council? Ms. Pillsbury.
I wanted to just go back and thank you guys for all the work you're doing for the wellness part. I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years about that, and it's been a huge concern of mine, making sure that all of you heroes in our community are taken care of, and that it's not affecting your personal lives and your family to a degree that's unattainable. So. Or that's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just really grateful that you have put so much energy and effort into doing that. I know fire has done the same. So the other question I just had, a slide that I was missing that I wanted to see, was just the efforts in the fentanyl opioid epidemic in our city, and what types of things we're seeing and what we're doing, and any data around that. I have residents reaching out to me wondering why we're not doing more when people are dying on our streets, and Mesa continues to be high on the list across the country of this type of drug use that's happening in our community. So I just would have loved to have seen a slide. I'm probably going to ask Fire the same thing, heads up, because I know you're both dealing with it and doing efforts to help in that regard. But that would just be my only other thing.
Okay, thank you.
We can have them present the Public Safety Committee too.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right there. I think that can get on your agenda.
That I'm on.
Mayor,
Yes.
just to wrap up, I just want, this is a time in Mesa where I think, as the way the chief started off, this is not a time to be humble about the fact that this is one of the safest large cities in the country. And that doesn't happen with a lot of work. And you're looking at, a chief that has been here through most of all his career and what he's done to lead this organization. I just want to express appreciation to him and his team, because it really does take a unique type of leadership to take on. I mean, think about the scope of issues we just talked about this morning, and to be able to bring those together and focus really on the end results of keeping this community safe is remarkable. And I just, having had the opportunity to work with not only several chiefs here in Mesa, but in other cities, this is remarkable that we have everybody pulling together, trying to work together. This department works very well with the other departments too, whether it's code compliance. We always see all the photos of the police department out there helping clean up neighborhoods, with our homeless programs and across the board of the city. So I just want to express my appreciation to them for the work they do. But you can see it comes at a cost. It is a significant cost across. And I think to Councilmember Duff's point, and I will say this is not sustainable to be able to provide this level of service with the current resources you have. It just won't be sustainable without the loss of tremendous amount of programs outside of public safety. So it is a challenge for something the council needs to have a conversation about, I think, in the future. Thank you.
I'll just add the comment, our foundational needs in our community starts with with our academies that we have. So we've authorized 3 academies per year to build the foundation of our police department so we can be more productive in meeting the needs of our residents. And so I appreciate that. And getting to, people out there, they look at the black and white cars, how many patrol officers out there on our streets, but what they don't see is that undercover, the unseen detectives and everybody who's out servicing our community. And there's every day, Chief, how many officers are in our community policing your city?
Oh, on a daily basis?
Yeah, daily.
I mean, outside
So
of patrol?
Patrol and detectives, everybody?
Oh, well over 150 officers that are out there, whether they're marked, unmarked, from Chief Nesbitt's division, where you have our major crimes, our gang units, our violent offender units, our street crimes folks. I mean, it is traffic. I mean, you're looking at several hundred officers per day that are out there protecting us.
And we want to tell them thank you. Thank you for their service. And we appreciate that. So with that, if there's nothing else, Ms. Goforth?
Just to reiterate and say, thank you for what you do. And I'm fairly new to the public safety game here on the council, and so I'm consistently impressed with all of the officers I encounter, their knowledge, their professionalism, and I truly appreciate our data-driven decision-making here. I know that's a top priority, you can tell, and every officer I speak with knows it and understands the mission, and I think that's important, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chiefs. Next, you want to take a 5-minute?
Yes.
Okay, council, just 5 minutes while fire sets up. We'll put them on the back burner. 11. Okay. Fire 1C is a presentation by Fire and Medical Department's budget. Welcome, Chiefs. And for the record, Mr. Adams had another meeting to go to.
Okay.
And Mr. Heredia may be online. So proceed.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Good evening. Or wait, it's still good morning. Let me say good morning. Sorry. Good morning. No, we truly appreciate the support that you as a council have given us over time, and especially in the arena of cancer, mental health, as you mentioned, Councilmember Spilsbury, but also support from Mr. Brady and Mr. Butler as well. That means a lot to our membership, and we are so grateful for that because it's not like that across the country, and so it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you so much. I'd like to start by recognizing my staff who do an amazing job every day. And I'll start to my right is Chief Forrest Smith. And some of you may know that he is retiring at the end of the month. So he wants this meeting to go as long as possible so we can absorb everything. But Chief Smith has been with the department for 25 years. Been a great addition to the team, not only for the department, but for the city, but valley-wide and actually nationwide. He's had impact. So I just want to publicly thank him for the service to the fire service, to the fire department. Thank you, Chief Smith. Also, I have Chief John Laughlin, Chief Corey Hayes, behind me, Deputy Director Tara Acuna, and then Assistant Chief Brian Darling here to my right. And in the back, our newest Assistant Chief that will be replacing Chief Smith is Chief Brent Burgett. He's in the back. Brent, can you wave your hand? Thank you. Also, I need to recognize our labor leaders who do an amazing job for our members. We have Captain Figgins back there, Captain Trevin Crosser, and also Sierra Alec, Captain Sierra Alec back there. Sierra, I want to thank PD for their quick response to Sierra this morning. She pulled in the parking lot and someone accosted her, attacked her car. PD got right on the person, and even Chief Butler had to do some jiu-jitsu to get this person down. So but Sierra's okay, and because of their quick response. Lastly, I really want to thank the men and women on the fire department who do a great job every day. Every area of this department is critical because they all are involved in helping us provide quality service when we respond on calls. And that doesn't go unnoticed because they are here to do a great job. Mr. Butler alluded to this in the March 6th council meeting. We said we're a busy department, and that's true. We've had a few times where we've offered jobs and to someone, and then they were offered a job by another department, other departments in the valley, and they opted to go to the other department. And when we followed up to why, they mentioned that same pay, fewer calls. So we know we're a busy department, but we're doing all we can to mitigate those calls as well. And some of the things that we do on a regular basis is, first of all, and we call this upstream management. We try to prevent the call from happening. And fire prevention, they're out there every day doing inspections, trying to reduce the number of fires that we have out there. We have our public education that's out there, educating on CPR, educating on falls, educating on all these different things that will prevent injury, how to prevent injuries. And also it's our social services division, which you'll hear more about from Chief Smith. But what they're doing in that arena and connecting them with the right resources, with assisted living, with home health, anything we can connect them to prevent, number one, to make them safer, but number two, to prevent a 911 call. So we think this is just as important to our community as to make it a safer community by doing these things. So we're working in that realm too. 2024, we ran over 70,000, Mesa was dispatched, in Mesa, over the 72,000 incidents were dispatched here in our own city. So we are a very busy department. In saying that, these are calls of any type, right? And our crews have to be ready for anything that they're called to. Also, 60,000 or 84% of them are medical calls. And these are medical calls of any nature. So the equipment that we have and the training that we get is crucial because a lot of these calls are very serious and people's lives truly depend on the care that we provide. So like I said, 84% is. We've had, and breaking down some of the other calls, last year we had about 4,700, a little over 4,700 calls dispatched related to fire related, which is 13 calls a day. Every day we get just under 200 calls, 13 calls a day are related to fire. That seems minimal, but it's a lot because these are high hazard, high risk types of incidents that they go on when there's a fire involved. Fire is very different today than it was years ago. Now with the synthetics out there, things burn faster, they burn hotter than ever before, and then we're faced with other things such as the battery, electric vehicle fires, battery chargers in garages, things like that, it's a game changer for how we fight fires. And the reason I bring this up is because this emerging trends that are happening changes the way we do business sometimes. A car fire with an electric vehicle is way different than a car fire used to be. So we continue to keep up on what we need to do to be prepared for our community. One of our safety captain is on a national committee that is looking at the best practices of how to handle these types of fires. And so we get direct impact on how it's going to be done across the nation. So we take these things very seriously. We want to be sure we provide our community with the best possible service that we can, and we'll continue to do so as we move forward. The men and women care about the people that we serve. They're here every day to do their job. We operate the Mesa way. When they come to work every day, every one of them know our mission statement and they live it to the very best they can. It's an honor for me to serve with these men and women every day. When they come to work, they truly put service before self. So with that, I will go ahead and get started with the presentation. As I said, our mission statement is to serve with care, which is compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. And really, in pursuit of our vision for a safe, healthy, and resilient Mesa is what we strive for. Our priorities here that we've gone over with our strategic plan was premier service delivery, which includes deliver emergency response to keep our community safe on a daily basis and every time we respond. Sustainable support services to meet the community needs as well. It's important for us to continue assessing the workload of our members to ensure quality service is always given, based on what their workload is. And also to support community risk reduction on a regular basis. What we can prevent is just as important. Our next objective or priority is a thriving, resilient workforce, which means we want to continue promoting wellness in our organization, support career ladder growth for our individuals in every area of the department so they can grow into positions, recruit to meet the needs of our community, and to retain the quality employees that we have. And then for a highly skilled workforce, we want to make sure that as we train, we continue to provide efficient and effective service when we respond on calls, and also continue to train to meet the emerging trends and the needs that are occurring within our community. Chief Laughlin.
Good morning. This first KPI that we're going to look at today is our response times. We look at this in both 50th percentile, so about half the time, 75th percentile, and 90th percentile. And the 90th percentile is what our accreditation and NFPA standards ask us to look at, but we also want to look at what we call most of the time and the average. So you'll see that our response times are pretty flat over the last couple of years, And I do want to point out, we do expect that to go down over the next few years as we open Station 22, which our police friends would call the Northeast Public Safety Facility. We just call it Station 22. Station 23, which is up next to the water treatment plant in North Mesa, and then Station 24, which is down about, it's on 80th Street, just north of Elliott. So those are some areas that we have a little bit longer response times to right now, travel times to right now. And so when we do have those facilities open, which should be, all three should be open within about the next year and a half, of course, with Station 22 opening in summertime, we do expect to see all three of these measurements go down. And what is included in this when we talk about response times for Mesa Fire Department? We're talking about our answer time, our dispatch time, call processing time, turnout time, which is the time from when the crews are notified of the call to the time the truck has wheels rolling, and then to the time when basically the parking brake is set at the call. And this is accumulation of those different categories. Here's just the 2018 to current call volume, overall call volume for the City of Mesa. As Chief Camilli pointed out, 2024 is about 72,000 calls. You can see it's been a little bit, just goes up a little bit each year. Obviously, we had a little dip in 2020 with the COVID slowdown, but we generally see a little bit of a couple thousand calls increase each year, accumulated last year in about 72,000 calls for service within the City of Mesa. And as you can see, as Chief Camilli also pointed out, a majority of those are medical. Then we also have the fire calls, motor vehicle accidents, and then service calls, which are sort of the other calls that don't quite fit into the other categories. So also, we talked about, what are we doing to prevent some fires and some calls? Obviously, the wildland urban interface calls have been in the news quite a bit, especially since the January fires they had in Los Angeles County and Ventura and Santa Barbara County out in California. We've actually been working with our communities for the last several years. We've had some significant fires in the valley in the Cave Creek area, Scottsdale, Daisy Mountain. So we've been working with our Northeast Mesa mostly communities up there to encourage them to become what we call a FireWise community. FireWise is a national curriculum, basically just best practices in the urban interface. And it is based on what your challenges are. Obviously, our challenges are different than Los Angeles, different than Prescott. They're unique to the desert of Arizona. So we do have one full FireWise community, which is Las Sendas in District 5. And we've been working with them for about 3 or 4 years. And we've got to the point where they have working with our fire department and also the State Department of Forestry and Fire Management. We've been able to work about some fuels mitigation and removal, taking away some of the dead fuels, and also trying to make some what we call defensible space between the desert areas. And it was a desert upland, so we're also very careful that we remove non-natives and not anything that's healthy. Just has a little bit of space between the vegetation and the houses. So we have some area that we can defend the houses. And that's really what you look for in any wildland or urban interface, is the ability to have some of that defensible space. And we work both on the landscaping side and also the homeowner side, because there's things the homeowner can do to lessen the possibility of that fire extending to their house, such as where and how they have their patio furniture organized. So you don't have a continuous fuel from basically your fence line to your house also. So a lot of that goes into it. We've been working a lot with the HOA up there for a long time, and they've been doing a lot of great work. We have a couple new communities that have reached out to us lately, Mountain Bridge and the Madrid HOA, and they're beginning the FireWise program. And so they're starting to do the fuels mitigation, but probably takes about a year before they're a fully FireWise community. But the important part is they're working on it now before the summer to get a lot of the fuels removed. Again, we engage the State Department of Forestry and Fire Management in these FireWise organizations. So what have we been doing? We did have a community meeting in Las Sendas a couple months ago. And we did, as you can see, have 170 residents attend that, so that was a great turnout. Talk about some of the concerns and what we're doing and what they can do to have a safer neighborhood. We've hosted several meetings at our fire prevention division down at our 708 West Baseline building. And just a couple of those, we had, again, in partnership with the Department of Forestry and Fire Management, which I'll just call DFFM from now on. A little easier. Home ignition zone, which is kind of we're talking about the defensible space and what you have around your house that is combustible. We've done interviews on Channel 11, and then we do have one of our fire inspectors that we've kind of identified as our main contact point to be the subject matter expert for all these desert wildland interface areas.
Chief, what about Boulder Mountain, Ellsworth, and McKellips? There are similar to Mountain Bridge, surrounded by
Yes.
national forest? out
We
there?
have reached out, so it was
That's
about 3 or 4
councilman
years.
for you.
It was maybe 4 years ago, we did have a lot of contact with Boulder Mountain, and we offered the Firewise community as a goal at that point in time. We continue to reach out to all the HOAs and we invite them to come to these meetings we have with the DFFM. But with Boulder Mountain, what we did with them is they didn't want to go at that point in time towards a full Firewise status, but we did have an inspector from one of our wildland firefighters and a person from the Department of DFFM go out there and meet with the HOA and walk the area and the perimeter and sort of discuss best practices that they could then encourage their HOA, through their HOA, the homeowners, to keep the fuels mitigated. They do have around the perimeter a pretty big, it almost looks like they went right up to the Usury Park, a pretty big defensible zone around their community as it comes down from Usury Park. So we have reached out to them, we have worked with them, we continue to reach out to all the HOAs and communities to see if they want to become Firewise communities though.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think they have as much common area lining through their community.
I don't think so, no. They do have a couple of the, yeah. Los Angeles and the county area to the east of Los Angeles are our biggest danger areas.
Well, I think that around the perimeter of Boulder Mountain to the east and to the north, they would be most affected by the national forest there.
Yes.
So just reaching out and having contact with them, see if they want to participate in the program.
Absolutely.
I think is critical.
And we do have partnerships, you mentioned the National Forest, on the suppression side. If there is anything, we have partnerships and existing relationships with the Tonto National Forest and their resources, and the Department of DFFM and their resources. So we would have a pretty robust response if there was to be an urban interface incident. We do have quite a few partners that we would call upon to assist up there, because it's going to come from the National Forest probably.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, Council, this slide looks like it's easy, but it's actually the most exciting slide you're going to see today. I know my friend Dan doesn't agree, but. So this is a slide talking about emergency transportation services. We're not going to go too in-depth on this. I think we're getting ready to present at Public Safety Committee on this, a more in-depth conversation, but this is an exciting time. On March 24th, we went into the full operation of our ambulance operation that started in May of 2018. So that build out has taken about 7 years. I think we initially asked to build it out in about 3 years. And I can tell you, we couldn't have done a lot of that. There was a lot of it that we've learned as we've gone through this, that thank goodness we were pushed. We were pushed by city management pretty hard to make sure that we had a robust plan. And in the end, I think the concerns played out pretty accurately. We were not planning to take on the entire system this March. We had initially planned to continue with our hybrid model with our private partners for another year or so, but we were well coached in planning for that as a contingent, and it is what happened. So we were able to up staff. We now have about 120 civilian paramedics and EMTs that work in our transportation ambulance operation, as well as 12 to 14 additional support staff and billers that make up the remainder of that. With that, you can see on our slide that we had expected with our 15 ambulances that we're running this past year, we're expecting to do about 26,000 transports. This year, we will now do about 42,000 transports. So that's our expected full build out. That's the number of ambulance transports that take place in the city of Mesa annually, with about the same growth that Chief Laughlin's call volume increases, our transports increase. So we're excited. We'll be back with a full presentation to the Public Safety Committee, and then we'd be happy to present to council if full council is interested.
Just real quickly while we're here, I mean, Corey needs to get a lot of credit for standing up this transportation services. It's where the private sector had provided these services for years before I got here, just began to decline and moved away from providing the service. And so the city, as much as we try to coordinate with the private sector, as they began to retreat from the services, we had to start standing it up, right? You have to transport. And so this is remarkable. It wasn't, we tried to plan it, Corey tried to work with the private sector, but it kind of, at the end here, kind of just accelerated on us. And so we were able to respond. The good news is Corey, Chief Camilli, they put together a really good plan, a business plan. Now we have a business plan to recover this cost. Eventually, it's hard to recover the initial outlay of the equipment, but certainly over time we will be able to do that. What's also impressive when we talk about staffing the fire department, the last time I had an opportunity to do new employee orientation for, I forget how many you had in that last class. It was a large group.
40.
I asked how many of them that were coming into this transport services division. I asked, well, how many of you someday would like to be a firefighter? More than half the room raised their hands. So in a way, this has become a great recruitment and probationary kind of evaluation. As I told them, we get to evaluate you and you get to evaluate our department. And so it becomes a great opportunity for us to have these services, and they get to be out there, they get to rub shoulders literally with the sworn officers in that response. So on many levels, this has become a very successful program. Thank you.
If I could echo, Chief Hayes and her staff have done an amazing job, and we have been hiring some of our transport folks as they are testing for fire, as Mr. Brady alluded to. So it is nice we get to see them for a year or so before we hire them for a 25-year career. Yeah, for sure. Chief Smith?
Chief, if you want to go ahead and hit play on this. My original plan was to talk over this, but I wanted to be able to give you a chance to look at the visuals here. Thanks, Chief. All right, well, thank you for indulging me on that one. Again, my name is Forrest Smith, and Mayor, Council, Vice Mayor, good morning to you. And I tell you what, this is a really exciting program to be able to discuss some of the things that we're doing in community risk reduction, which is really social services, public education, fire prevention, public information. Really is something that we're all in on as an organization when it comes to how do we reduce the need for emergency services and how do we improve the quality of life in our community. And so as we look to say, how do we also do things such as bridge and build stronger community connections and make a safer community, increase the health of our community, as well as decrease some of the social determinants of health that are the negative sides of that. How do we increase these social determinants by providing access to things such as healthcare and food and all those things? That may not be a fire department job, but what we're finding is that that's some of the folks that our people are running on. Those are our friends and neighbors that we see out there. So some of the images that you saw right there was depicting our social services division as well as our public education division. And in some cases, the programs that we have there on that home safety education side, which is part of the education that we do, is to really find out some of those folks who are actually needing the resources that keeps them out of the hospital and decreases their injuries or decreases the chances they're going to suffer from fall injuries. And so one program, if I may mention briefly, is our home safety education program, which has reduced calls. Now, I don't necessarily have a slide for this, but I wanted to bring it up because these are the programs that we put in place where if we find that we have individuals, and these are our crews who are going out and finding that there's an individual who had called 911 for one thing, but they may have observed that there are other things going on in that home. So the company officer may say, I'm seeing some things here where this person's going to need additional resources to keep from having to call 911. So she may make that phone call to our social services division and our home safety education side, in which they come out and install grab bars and such. So in cases like that, we found that we've had reductions of about 64% where we're taking at least 40 calls out of the system for just preventing the fall injuries. Now, here, the slide that we're showing is another part of our social services program, which is our high utilizer program. Now, these are the folks, right, Mayor Freeman, right? Yeah, these are the folks that give us a call in reuse services at least 3 times in a 90-day period of time. So the referrals and the way we find out about these folks are either through the social services division, going through the calls and looking to see if they see trends in addresses, or crews as they're out on these calls making a referral because they recognize Mr. and Mrs. Smith can use more than having crews come out. So what they'll do is they'll make the referral through the social services side, and then we'll make some interventions. And as you're seeing depicted right here, we had 45% of the calls, and this just is showing a snapshot for November, where we took 45% of the calls out of the system. So if you imagine you have 100 calls, we were able to take 40 calls out of the system and decreasing it to 60 calls. That's just for the high utilizers. Now, these are also the ones where we have other folks who may be in the system who may not be high utilizers, but they're constantly, but we're encouraging our crews to also call if they find that those folks may have other social determinants or other things that are impacting their quality of life. Now, if I may add also, is the social services program. Who are these folks? So these are people that we have, our professional staff who are called fire and life safety education specialists. They have backgrounds in adult education, child education. We have some of them who have master's degrees in social work. And what they're doing is they're the ones who are now working with our interns from Arizona State University, NAU, and U of A, and who we have come in who now have this opportunity to do real world experiences in the field, and then, of course, get credit for this. So these programs we're extremely proud of because at the end of the day, it gives us that opportunity, of course, to keep people out of the hospitals, to decrease the need for our emergency crews to have to go out, and also, again, improve the quality of life of some of these folks in our community. And, one thing, too, is if you can imagine you have an 80-year-old neighbor and you typically are at home having a cup of coffee, you look outside, and you see a truck in front of this person's house again. Picture this 82-year-old male who you've seen him out there wandering the streets, and you call 911, you have PD show up, we show up. So, okay, we take him off to the hospital. Then you call again. You call for a second time, but what you don't know in the background is that our social services crew, in this particular case of this neighbor of yours, is talking to this patient's niece. The niece is pretty much saying, I'm struggling taking care of my uncle. I need help. So what our social services crew in this particular situation has reached out to Adult Protective Services and started working with them to determine if they have an investigator assigned to this case. Now, this case is also staffed and talked about in utilizer meetings, which we meet regularly with the Mesa Police Department and their mental health support team, in which we work with them, as well as the city's community outreach department, because now we're starting to say, okay, what areas are these folks touching? What other areas or what other departments are impacted by these folks? And what can we do collectively to help their situation? So as you're having your coffee on another day, you find that crews are out there again. And so what you don't see is that social services also now met with that person's APS investigator. Also, Adult Protective Services now assigns a public fiduciary, a VA case manager, and we're still working with the Mesa Police Department's health support team. And what they do now is they start identifying, okay, what other services can we do and provide for this individual? Again, working with them collaboratively and bringing in other county resources. So you go back to your coffee. The next time, the third time, you happen to see a fire truck out again. And what's working in the background is this public fiduciary has been working with the psychiatrist who's been assigned through APS. As well as our social services group, who is now working with that person and this team of healthcare professionals to get them into the Arizona long-term care system. And at that point, as you talk to this gentleman's niece, you find that this gentleman did get long-term care, is no longer needing the 911 system, and then she's in a much better place. So my point there is that, when we look at the calls where we had, in this case, 3 calls generated, as a result of the lack of resources that are coming from so many other places where we come in. And what we're not doing is taking on caseloads where we now are attached to that patient. What we're doing is we're a resource allocator where we're finding where we can provide resources and reach out and bring different organizations together. And that's the strength of this, right? When we take a look at what we do as city employees, and the beautiful thing about working here in Mesa that I got out of it is the fact that it's not about us working in silos. We find ways to solve problems. We find ways to make a better quality of life. And government isn't just some entity sitting there. It is made up of people who care. It's people who are doing things the Mesa way, who are doing things where they're saying, hey, how do we have these community bonds and these connections that help make for a better quality of life? So we appreciate the support you've given us over the years, and of course, the support that city management has given us, and then the creativity that I've been able to have with my colleagues here when we look at ways where we can solve these problems. And of course, a group of folks who are on the social services and our education side who are constantly looking at new ways to be able to support our community. So for that, we do appreciate the time to be able to present here. Thank you.
Ms. Spilsbury has a question.
I love this and the deep compassion that you guys show. Do you ever get neighbors, nonprofits, churches involved in this type of work?
Thank you very much. Well, Mayor, Councilmember Spilsbury, we absolutely do. When I think of some of our partners like Dylan over at Just Serve, Astor Aging, everybody's in on it. And so what we do is we'll find out, okay, what is the issue? Is it a food insecurity, for instance? Is it needing assistance with housing? What we'll do is we'll get with community services, city community services, and we'll see whether or not there's any services that we can provide that we have access to there. So to answer your question, it is not just us. It's us finding all the different solutions in different groups, the volunteer groups, Astor Aging, as I mentioned, if it's United Food Bank. This is what makes Mesa so much smaller, right? We have so much connectivity to so many services that our public and our residents aren't in on it by themselves. And our job that we get to do that gives us that purpose is to be able to find the resource to make for that better quality of life. So, I like to quote, in fact, when you think of Viktor Frankl or you think of other writers and all who've talked about meaning and purposeful work, this is what we're finding with our employees. And I think that's something that I could say for you all for being in the positions you're in, city leadership, and all of our employees here, my colleagues behind us, where we got in this where we feel like we're doing purposeful work. So at the end of the day, yes, we are.
I love that. Beautiful answer.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Tara Cunha.
All right, good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our financial summary. This first slide is our general governmental funds. I'm just going to walk you through top to bottom, left to right, and please feel free to stop me if you have questions. We have community involvement, and that includes emergency management, prevention, public education, PIO, and social services. On this, you can see in 24-25, there was an increase, and that was for our prevention division. They had a decision package where they added 4 FTE in a vehicle. They're not all hired quite yet, or for a full year quite yet. So you can see in 25-26, that full year will be expended. Is it budgeted, sorry. Then we have our departmental support, which is training, EMS, maintenance, planning and research, personnel and wellness, resource, special ops, and tech support. So this huge increase you see in 24-25 is largely life cycle and carryover. I think you're all aware we have a life cycle schedule that we present to city management, to OMB every year, so there's no surprises. It's any of our over $10,000 with a useful life we had on that spreadsheet. So in 24-25, we had $4.1 million in the self-contained breathing apparatus PAC replacements. There were about 350 of those. We had $1 million for generators because one carried over from last year. 350,000 ballistic gear. We have a 75,000 ongoing fuel contingency. That's the only one of these that is ongoing. All of them are, the others are one time. $1.2 million in tech support for dispatch consoles, 400,000 for small vehicle replacements, $1 million for CPAP ventilators. There were 37 of those, and then 1.1 million for new station O&M or FF&E. That'll be carried over because the stations haven't opened yet. The next one is incident response, so that's operations and dispatch. We've continued to have high overtime, higher than budgeted in dispatch for a few years, and we're working with OMB on that. And in operations, overtime is slightly high, and then is in the 25-26 proposed budget, and this is across the board, that includes the benchmarking and merits for everybody. All right. This one is our public safety sales tax fund. So this one, it looks like it's intentionally budgeted high. All of the positions and the overtime are budgeted as though they're topped out. And then when the actuals hit, they're actuals. So obviously everybody's not topped out. So that's where you see the fluctuation there. On department support, the year-end estimate's low because we had 2 stations utilities budgeted. And again, they haven't opened yet, so they didn't hit there. And an incident response, that also includes the benchmarking that we talked about before. And then this is our ETS, Emergency Transportation Services Fund. And as Chief Hayes talked about, we had program expansion 24-25, and then again this year in March. And this one is, our revenues are coming in higher than our expenditures. All right.
I have a question on that. On our cost to stand up our emergency transport services, so we had to stand up some monies, and when do we recover those costs? You know, over the next couple, 3 years? Is it 5 or 6 years to stand it? I mean, I know there's a time in there. Chris, do you remember that?
Well, it's mostly related to, so we bill, right? We bill for that service. We bill
Correct.
through Access or the insurance or the individual. What we mean is where we're not covering our costs is mostly because we're having to buy the ambulances, right? And so over a period of, like, it's about 5 years or so after we build into the rate, eventually we recover the cost of that.
The
those
cost
ambulances.
recovery is over 5 years.
Initially, especially when we had to stand up, how many again did we just stood up?
6. Oh, just now, you mean?
New ambulances?
Yeah, we just had to add 7.
7, so, you know, the rate doesn't cover immediately in a year the 7. So over about 5 years is how we set the rate. It will cover the cost of the staffing, but the ambulance cost will be recovered over about a 5-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we were asked for our reductions, we were asked to do $3 million over 3 years. I'm going to turn this over to the chiefs to talk about their areas.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. The number one item on here was just a small reduction of $68,000 to delete the pre-recruit position. That position is in the event that we have someone we really want to hire, but maybe let's say we can only take 25 in this academy and we have a 26th person. That gives us the ability to offer them a job, bring them onto the department, and then guarantee them a spot in the next academy. How that helps us is in the event, right now, recruiting is tough with fire departments across the country. It allows us to kind of retain that person so we don't lose them to another department in the 6-8 months or a year it takes before our next academy. And then Chief Laughlin's going to discuss reduce hiring by 8.
Okay, the second item you see here is the reduced hiring by 8. We did have programmed into the budget for this upcoming fiscal year, the 25-26 fiscal year, to hire 8 additional firefighters to support a future unit. So those, as you can see, we're reducing our hiring by 8 to come up with the about $2 million of the $3 million target for over the 3 years that we have coming up.
Ms. Spilsbury.
And on that, where were the 8 going to go, and what are we doing instead of that?
So the plan was, we actually have 8 that we hired this year. We're going to hire another 8 next year. And they were projected to staff what we were going to have as a 24-hour MR. Usually our MRs are first 12 only. And this was going to staff a 24-hour MR at projected to be at Station 5 over on Greenfield between Broadway and Southern. So we're just not going to hire the second 8. We have a little bit of time to figure out how we're going to staff a second unit at Station 5, because that is our highest call volume first 2 area in the city, is Station 5. Right now, we do have, we talked about a little bit before, we have Station 22, or the Northeast Public Safety Facility. Station 23 and 24, all in different phases of being built. Station 22, obviously, very soon. 23 and 24, summer, fall next year. But because those 3 engines are funded by the public safety sales tax, we were able to put those in service a little bit early. Engine 24 going in service just in January of this year. So we have a little bit of flexibility with those units and our other MRs to offset this for some time. But when we get to that point where all those engines are where they're supposed to be in those new stations, We do have a call volume, response time, travel time challenge at Station 5 that we're going to have to work with city management and the council to identify what we're going to do about that. Again, we do have 8 people that we already hired because we were kind of staggering the hiring over the 2 budget years. To establish an engine company, we need to identify 4 more somehow. We do have existing resources, existing FTEs that we can look about optimizing where they are and how we're using them. But we do have a little bit of time, but we do definitely, when Station 24 probably is the last one to get, maybe 23, when everybody's where they're going to end up, we'll have that challenge.
If 5 is the one, it's mine, but is 5 the one that's getting renovated, right?
It's getting more than renovated. It's
Well,
getting,
yeah,
it's
kind of
getting taken down
redone.
to- It's getting taken
I didn't know
down
what
to-
word to use, but.
It's getting entirely taken down to dirt and redone, and it's, I think we're at about 90% plans on that. It's going to be a very nice facility.
Going to move people around for now. Does this, this affects how the size of our recruit academies then?
Yes.
At what point do we have to, we don't want to get behind if we know we're going to need them in the future. That's what you're saying, right? But you have
Yes.
You have a plan in place to make sure we don't get stuck without enough people.
Well, we do have some ideas.
Okay.
Again, we do have, again, we have the 8 people that for the foreseeable future, we either use those maybe to offset some overtime for the next year and a half. But we do have 8 people that'll support something at that facility. We just need to identify another 4. Again, we have other resources. We can look around to see how we're going to identify another 4 people, because we need 12 for an engine company for 3 shifts of 4 people. So that's the goal. And we know the budget challenges are what they are. So we're looking at existing resources and how we're going to do that. Our challenge is, of course, that the other stations that have 2 resources now, by resources I mean engine, ladder, MR. They're all high call volume areas also.
Okay.
So it's hard to just alter those. So we're going to work with city management, city council over the next year as we get closer to the opening of Station 23 and 24 to see what we can do to offset the call volume at Station 5. And again, really we look at our two biggest data points that we look at are call volume, and that's a firefighter well-being issue, but call volume also impacts response times into a first area, because once you start getting to that 3,500 call volume, 36 closing on 4,000 for a single unit, they're on a lot of calls. And so you're having to have other units from what we call second due areas come into those first due areas to cover. So it takes a couple more minutes to get there once they're on. You're always gonna have that happen sometimes. You just wanna keep that as minimal as you can.
So, but currently, with 5 being so high volume, we are able to cover those positions so that station's not affected for now.
Right, currently at Station 5, we have engine 205 and we have engine 222, which again, we were able to put in service a couple of years ago.
I don't know how you guys keep all the numbers straight.
30 years. So we do have those resources there. When Station 22 opens in July-ish, we'll move to engine 22, obviously we'll go there, and then we'll have to evaluate what we have available, what services we have, what units we have available, and see if we need to alter anybody, because we need to have another resource, whether preferably a 24-hour resource, because it is busy and it's busy at night there. Kind of look at what we can move around as we build out the next 3 stations.
Okay, thank you.
And Mayor, Councilmember Spilsbury, because where Station 5 is located, it's in the very perfect spot for the call volume in that area. The church to the south has been gracious enough to let us, we're going to house our units there for the time of the build. So they're going to be in the area as well during this whole build.
Who's up, Tara?
Yep, Tara's up again.
Yeah. We had one budget adjustment request this year, and it's for cancer screenings. We do have $210,000 in the public safety sales tax that we use for cancer prevention, so this is additional funds in the general fund. I think that's okay. And then we've written some grants, but we haven't gotten responses on those yet. So some of the future plans for cancer prevention include the recharge rooms, and that's like a washing machine for the SCBA packs. And I think you can put other things in there, but we're working on all of that. I think that's it.
Okay, any questions?
What I didn't see is how you doing on overtime? police department talked about overtime in their budget. How is the fire department doing with your budget on overtime?
Mayor,
Please.
our overtime is really high in dispatch right now, as in the general fund. And it's, at the end of the year, we're utilizing the public safety sales tax fund because some of our overtime doesn't hit there. So we kind of do a true up at the end of the year. And it's looking like we won't need additional funding for general fund this year. Except for dispatch, sorry.
Mayor and council, on the operations side, on the fire truck side, we're actually doing fairly decent in overtime. We just recently met with OMB a couple weeks ago just to double check that, and it's been fairly consistent over the years. We haven't had, other than the COVID year, we haven't had any big spikes. It's kind of consistent with what we've been doing, and obviously as we add more, but if you look at a percentage of leave that requires overtime coverage for minimum staffing, we've been fairly consistent. So between general fund and public safety sales tax, we're able to be pretty solid on our overtime, pretty consistent.
Good. Anything else?
I just feel like we should go longer because we didn't even get half of the PD time. I didn't hear very much humble bragging from you guys.
So you're saying next year we should be first?
I guess so, yes. Let's get you done and before we head to PD. No, I would love to hear you just say, like, what are the things you're the most proud of with your department?
Well, can I start? Because
I'm super proud of you, but I want to hear what you say.
Forrest covered a lot of that.
Yeah.
When we talk about, again, one of the things I keep preaching is don't get distracted by a lot of things that are happening around us. You got to get back to what is our purpose, right? What is our focus? A lot of things are happening. And the focus here, right, is delivering that response in a very timely manner. So, and John and I have worked on this for years. We feel like we're very comfortable. When you show you that chart on response time, that means you're delivering a high quality, professional triage medical response that can take on all kinds of hazards, right? Just getting that truck to that location changes the world for someone, right? It's an amazing resource that once we pull up. And so for the fire department, it is about getting there, right? And getting there are those responses. And so when you look at that chart, and that's why we kind of broke it down in those three different tiers at 50%, that means that half the time we're getting there in a remarkably fast period of time. And now I get it, the person that makes the call that's on the 911, they're gonna make it seems like hours, right? But relative to our peer cities, most of the peer cities are what we do 90% of the time, right? 90% of the time, you're getting these services regardless of where you live in the city of Mesa. Your experience can be very different, but it's going to be less than 10 minutes. That we're going to show up. And there are cities that are struggling. That 9 minutes is their 50%, right? And so I think it's remarkable. The strategy we've been able to deploy is being able to place these stations around the city so that we can be very strategic, and we're going to see that. I really think John's right. And after we get the third station completed that's either under construction or design, it'll be interesting to see that. And that's what's going to make a difference in someone's life, right? When they're calling 911 and they have a medical emergency or fire emergency, is being able to get now across the city. That 9 minutes is going to drop. That the 50%'s at 6 or something, it's going to drop. So because we've strategically placed these fire stations, we believe, and I think this is true, if you were to go, because we were talking about police officers per 1,000 or whatever that thing was, is nonsensical, frankly. But when you look at fire stations per cities of our square miles in population, it's hard to stand up to the commitment this community has made through general obligation bonds and through the public safety sales tax to now get, the ratio of fire stations per capita or I don't know if it's per capita or square mile is right up there with the best. So, which obviously goes to the response time. So I would just say, and what the Mary and her folks do is then make sure we deliver the highest quality of care once we're there, right? And now we're having to transport them, which we weren't having to do before. So, which actually I think helps us with the continuation of that care from beginning to end. So there's my brag. How's that?
Anyone else want to brag?
I do want, thank you, Mr. Brady, I appreciate that. I do want to brag. I'm very grateful for the men and women in every area of this department that do the job that they do. Recruitment across the country is down. It's not a Mesa issue, it's a national issue. And people are not as open to coming into this career. It's very physically demanding, it's emotionally demanding. You see tragedy every day, they live with that. They go home to their families and they deal with this stuff. We have the exposures of cancer, mental health, and that's why we're so grateful for the support. But I'm thankful for all the men and women, all the support that goes behind the response, but everything, because it's not as sought after as it used to be because of the inherent dangers that go with the job. And there's still folks out there that have this calling to do this and serve the community. And I'm grateful for those that do it in our department and for the 760 plus members that we have today. I'm grateful for the support from city management, from council, because we're going to keep doing what we're going to do to make our community safer and better. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm crying.
That's not unusual.
No, it's not. And Chief Kameli is one of my heroes. So, but no, I'm so grateful. Sorry that I didn't cry during police, but
It's not agendized.
yeah. No, I'm just so grateful for all the work that you guys do. It really is just so remarkable. And again, the care and compassion that you emphasize in your department really comes out with everyone that works under you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman Smith.
Quick question, because everybody as well. With the response times, they look pretty decent, although they're going to come down. But I'm a little concerned given the vast land that's in the county right now and what's happening there. How are responses to the county islands impacting our response time? Are we responding a lot out there? And what's our contingency should they lose their service? Are we working on this? Because this has a fiscal impact on our budget.
I'll start. Mayor, Vice Mayor Summers. Yes, we have met a few times on this with looking at, go ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a work in progress.
Well, yeah, so we've been in contact with, what's his title? Is he with the state?
County Board of Supervisors.
The County Board of Supervisors, and working on setting up fire districts. And
Fire districts, yes.
Yeah, fire district staff.
Yes.
What I'm not sure, but I know we've been talking to them about going out and talking to those residents so that they can understand what their options might be in the future. If they want to stand up a fire district and what that would entail, and kind of, because it's not that they're just letting us know, and we're supporting that we think they should be out having those conversations, because to your point, rural metro may not always be there in the future.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we had to stand up the ambulance services because their loss or whoever the private provider was lost their C of N, certificate of necessity, so they couldn't provide the service anymore. And my concern is the budget impact and the operational impact should this get dropped in our lap day after tomorrow. I have no indication
that's a concern,
that's gonna
but my concern, frankly, of serving a county island is the safety of our personnel.
You're absolutely right.
Because of the development standards, the roads, and everything else going in there, lack of fire hydrants, whatever.
Code.
So, just all those. So we're going to try to do everything we can to make sure somebody else is figuring that out.
All right, I'm just glad you're
Yes, thank you.
constantly looking at that. Thank you.
Chief, how many calls for service does your department respond to per year? I know it was in the presentation.
Yes, we were dispatched in Mesa alone to 72,000 calls were dispatched in the city of Mesa, over 70. It's actually 72,100 and something, 72,135 calls for service that were dispatched in the city of Mesa in 2024, which averages 198 calls per day. That's just in our city.
So I want to brag a little bit, having been there and done that. But the deployment of station engine companies 22, 23, and 24, and deploying them throughout the city to help reduce the call load of other stations. But in the future, we're going to, as they get deployed into their home stations, we're going to have to look about how we're going to provide additional services in the areas that they come out of because of the call volume that's going to be affected. And I think more importantly, I brought up the homeowner comparison for Mesa. We're a full service city. We provide all the services except some electric in certain parts of our city. But for $2,202 a year, paying our utilities and taxes that we do, we provide it all. And I think we're the second to the lowest, well, actually the third lowest in all the municipalities in comparison. So when we go out there, that's one of the things that I say, we are a very frugal, responsive city providing high-quality public service to our community, and we will continue to do that and invest in our public safety personnel, but more importantly, their well-being and keep them healthy and safe. Yep. And we're growing all the time. We're not stagnant, so we're looking to the future and have to plan accordingly. And to the point, well, funding is an issue, and services and programs that we have to look at in the future. So I applaud you for looking for areas that you can cut in our department, which kind of pains us a little bit because we don't want to lose services to our community residents, especially those on social services side. Right. I mean, I know that firsthand. You know, as engine companies respond repetitively to calls, it takes them out of service for a really important call. Because I remember the days I'd respond to a call at 3 in the morning, just somebody wanted to talk, you know, and you do as well. But at the end of the day, you're providing quality service to just, I told my crew, you can complain all you want inside the engine in the cab, but when you get out, you're a professional.
Yep.
And so, with that said, I know that we have a really great department, both police and fire, and we'll continue to do that for the future. So with that, can I say, you know?
Losing 3 council members made it shorter too.
Well, with that, if there's no other questions, thank you, chiefs.
Thank you so much.
Go back and do your jobs, all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I need an acknowledgement to accept minutes of our prior meeting. That's the Historic Preservation Board. Is there a motion to do that? Thank you, Ms. Dove. Ms. Billsbury. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next is current events and conferences attended. Council, do you want to?
I'll go quickly.
Okay.
Tuesday, I was able to speak at CompuDops Community Appreciation Celebration, and we're really grateful for them and all the computers and service they give to our community. Wednesday, we had MCC's 60th anniversary, another one. They have a lot of them this year, but a 60th anniversary celebration that Mayor spoke at, and Councilmember Duff and I were both there. And then yesterday I was able to speak to a group at Leisure World to provide City and District 2 updates, even though they're not actually residents of our city. They live right in the middle of it, so they care about what's going on too. So happy to do that.
But they buy our water.
They do.
And they pay wastewater, so they are
Go to
kind
our
of.
stores and drive our roads.
Great. Anyone else? Vice Mayor.
I would just like to extend my appreciation to Superstition Spring Division for Coffee with a Cop yesterday. Very successful. We're looking forward to more of those. And I covered the MCC Red Mountain 60th birthday yesterday afternoon as well.
Great. With that, I toured Urbix. They're a homegrown from the lab here at downtown Mesa, and they are phenomenal. They produce a carbon battery for a lot of our cell phones and electric vehicles. So homegrown in Mesa, and they're expanding. So they're a great a tribute to what Mesa has done, our economic department. And then yesterday I spoke at the Developer Roundtable Luncheon at the Post with Nana, and Mr. Hirschberg was there leading off. So with that, Mr. Brady, can you share future meetings?
We're going to celebrate Mesa this Saturday.
Well, give me a chance.
I forgot about that.
That's his job.
Yeah, sorry.
So yeah, celebrate Mesa, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We will also have the, what do we call it, the kickoff, the opening, the inauguration of the Read Runner at 10:30 that morning. And then we'll see you back here on Thursday, April 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Julie, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I can't say that.